Good evening and welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. This evening we're extremely pleased to announce that Grandma Stacy Alvarez, our city clerk, Grandma, yes, the birth of her first grandchild, Christopher Frederick Foley, and she got there in time. So henceforth and forevermore, whenever you see it, just say, "Hi, Grandma." And if we could have a roll call, please, Grandma.
Councilmember Costa. Present. Councilmember Starbuck.
Present.
Councilmember Lingle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dwayne Holmdahl.
Here.
Mayor John Lynn.
Here. And we didn't have a closed session, despite what we originally started out, so we don't have a report from the closed session we didn't have. And now, for our invocation, Mary Harvey. Mary? She has a little different invocation. Just hold on, everybody. Sit.
So, sorry, Mayor Lynn invited me actually at one point to do the invocation, but he just told me just now that usually people stand for the invocation and then they remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. So due to the nature of my invocation, I'd like to just ask people to remain seated, and then at the end of my invocation, I'll remind you to stand. Is that okay? I hope. Because what I would like to do for my invocation is I would like to offer you a very short guided meditation. So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, city staff, and confused residents, please gently close your eyes and take a moment to relax your body and to free your mind from busyness. We can begin by thinking, the results of my actions depend on my motivation. If I am motivated by self-concern and self-importance, my actions will be pervaded by impatience, disrespect, and negativity. I will experience unpleasant feelings, and the result will be disharmony and confusion. On the other hand, if my motivation is to benefit others, my actions will be positive. When I understand I am only one person, others are countless, my actions will be considerate, patient, and compassionate. The result will be decisions and actions that lead to harmony and benefit for others, and a happier, more peaceful mind for myself. In conclusion, we can think, in order to benefit others and experience a more peaceful, contented mind, I must view others as equally important and work for their benefit. In the final moments of this meditation, develop a heartfelt determination to abandon self-concern and work for the benefit of others. Thank you. Now we can pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stacy, do you have the proclamation? Yeah. Okay, we're going to wing this. There will be a 3-minute break while Stacy gets the copy. Typically, the proclamations arrive, and this one is in a safe place. So if you all from the Fire Foundation would come on down, right over here. Chief, are you joining us? This is their. I think you can back them up. put you in the back row. We can get the dog in the front row because everybody loves that dog. Come on in. Yes, absolutely.
There's more of us.
More? Oh, well, who wants to do introductions?
I'll be happy to.
I think you're in charge.
I'm in charge. Good evening. Honorable Mayor, members of the council. Ralph Harmon, current president of the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation. Behind me, I'll step around for a minute. We have two of the founding members, Judy Delp, Gloria Nuremberg, and other members, Arlene Lewis, and Gail Peterson, there's a lot of Mel Peterson, and okay, thank you. She's one of our newest members, so I don't have all the names in my head yet. And there are just about double this number that aren't here tonight, so we do work for a living too.
Ralph, you didn't introduce the dog.
Oh, what the dog name?
He's a new member. This is Avila.
Okay.
Well, you know, as our first and most successful foundation, you guys have done amazing things to benefit the fire department and to benefit the community through all of the efforts that you've made to, how would I say, promote life-saving and good things out there. And here's our hero, Stacy.
Saving the day.
That's it. So, whereas the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation was established in 2005 and was organized to support the Lompoc Fire Department by raising funds for needed equipment for firefighters to perform their job and enhance their abilities to provide excellent service to the community. And whereas the mission of the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation is to provide community awareness, funding, and resources for the Lompoc Fire Department to obtain the equipment, technology, and training necessary to maintain the highest level of service possible, safeguarding life, property, and the environment. And whereas over the last 9 years, the foundation has very generously raised funds, purchased and donated equipment in support of the department's mission of ensuring the safety and providing quality service to the community. And whereas in 2013, the foundation's volunteers, undying dedication and perseverance in fundraising secured sufficient funding that allowed the conversion of the department's utility truck to a much-needed quick response rescue squad, which provide Lompoc with a third response unit. And whereas the foundation also recently completed a year-long charitable effort to raise funds to purchase a state-of-the-art fire safety and disaster preparedness training trailer that will greatly enhance the department's community education program, and it'll be fun. Whereas the foundation members have generously and loyally donated hundreds of hours in support of the department at numerous community events, and whereas the citizens of our community are truly benefited by being better protected and safer because of the altruistic efforts of the Firefighters Foundation. Now, therefore, I, John H. Lynn, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, California, do hereby recognize and commend the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation for exemplary service, support, and dedication to our fire department and the safety of our community for over 9 years. Our city is greatly benefited by their efforts, and the City Council, all of us, hereby wishes to sincerely thank all the members of the Lompoc Firefighters Foundation. If you would join me in applause.
Thank you very much, Mayor. A couple other things the foundation is very happy to do is we have a scholarship fund, and as a result of that, correct me, it's six young men and women have gone through the fire academy as a result of the funding through that scholarship as well. We have another very important project that's underway. That's our CARA project,
where we are doing safety inspections in homes, installing, with the cooperation of the fire department, smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors in as many dwellings as we can. As soon as people contact us, we have trained volunteers that will go out and do the inspection and see that that gets installed. Hopefully, we'll have many lives saved simply by getting those smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors in the homes. And part of the safety inspection we do, we help educate people and helping them learn how to be able to put out a fire quickly themselves, and then particularly in the kitchen where we have a large number of our fires start there. It's just little simple things that we can show the people that can be done. So in addition to raising money, we're doing those projects as well. So, thank you. Oh, that's it? Okay. Thank you.
And the city administrator's status report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things to take note of. First of all, was able to attend the dinner that our local firefighters hosted for the Velo Fire Service Cancer Awareness Ride. It's a ride of firefighters who come in and ride in a bicycle ride from the Bay Area, from San Francisco down to Los Angeles, and as they were coming through Lompoc, we were able to host them for a dinner. There was like 45 riders plus their support team that rides along to help them with logistics, and it was a great time to be a part of that, and appreciated participating. I attended the Champion Center grand opening, and I know people have heard plenty about that center, but just to reiterate, I think it's not only a fantastic cause and program that's in place, but the fact that we were able to do it by repurposing that building is that much more of a plus. So it's a double win for the city and for the people it's going to benefit. So appreciated that very much. Finally, as part of this particular section of the agenda, I'm going to ask Purnamawa to come up with the Veritas Government Financial. As you know, we've had an ongoing project in enhancing city revenue. This component of our enhancement is not about raising fees or introducing new fees, but rather going and looking line item for line item and seeing where we can enhance the collection of revenue that we're entitled to, but maybe had not been doing a full job of capturing. And so she's prepared a presentation. I'm going to turn that over to her, and the floor is yours. And I'll hand out copies of her presentation to the dais here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council, for having me here for the second presentation. And I'll get right to the presentation. I'm just going to do a quick recap from the last presentation. The last presentation I covered the library, public works, part of public works, and part of the finance department. So I had particularly for the library, as far as the revenues are concerned, there was a donation flyer that was sent out in May 2014 with the utility bills as a part of revenue enhancement. And this is what we've seen as of July 31st. We've seen 62 new monthly donors bringing in $281.50 a month, which is estimated at around $3,378 a year. We're seeing 11 one-time new donations at a total of $132, 42 new roundup donations. Again, this is just an approximation. We're also seeing other utility donors not related to the flyer, and that's about 293 donors at $4,158. And if you add up the 4,158 to the other number, you get 4,571.90 as of July 31st. So we are seeing money coming in into the library. As far as Public Works is concerned, the River Park Campground saw, they went ahead and raised their fees, and we are seeing some good news in the revenues. In June 2013, we had seen a slump at $7,821. In June 2014, the revenues jumped up to $12,507, and that's a variance of $4,686, or a 60% revenue change in the positive. Which is good news. Occupancy rates also at the campground, June 2013, 34%. June 2014, occupancy rates have gone up at 38%. So it's commensurate with what we're seeing as far as the revenue numbers. On the finance side, I'm going to cover the TOT very briefly. I'm just recommending that we've had two hotels that were delinquent for TOT, and going forward, I would recommend that the city institute some sort of a policy to have a customer's debit, credit, and or automatic bank withdrawal authorization on file, so that we detract chronic delinquent payments. As far as hotel number 1, we are looking at a total of $175,000 in back taxes. As of July 31st, we've collected $47,000, and the Hotel 1 has signed a contract, and the contract will be paid in full by June 2015. Hotel 2, unfortunately, is a different game changer. They owe about $334,000 in TOT back taxes, and this includes interest and penalties, as of July 30th, 2014. And monies at this point could be collected through either a court judgment or a lien on property, depending on what the city attorney's office might advise. I'm going to jump right into this month's findings, actually since the last presentation. I'm going to look at the police department. And first I'm going to look at the fees and fines. And the fees and fines within the police department have not been updated for a while, for at least the last 4 or 5 years, since 2010, to really reflect true costs within the department. I'm also looking at parking tickets and false alarm billing fees. They saw a dramatic decrease in revenue since 2010, and I'll look at that very briefly. Parking tickets are outsourced presently with a private company called Data Ticket. And if you look at the numbers from 2010 through 2014, you can see that the parking ticket fines went from $47,000 to $17,976, and on the false alarm billing fees, they went from $9,185 to $3,640 in 2014. And I'm going to explain this in the next few slides. Booking fees and correctable citation sign-off fees have stayed consistent, so I'm not really, I just wanted to sort of mention this. We're seeing consistent numbers. I'm not seeing any kind of anomalies here, so this looks pretty okay. As far as private events go, I know that the police department takes part in several private events, and 2 in particular are the Flower Festival, which is a 5-day event, and Spring Arts Festival, which is a 3-day event. And the costs of providing security have been entirely absorbed by the police department. And they're quite substantial if you look at the costs from 2010 through 2014. Now in 2014, there are 4 police officers instead of 6, so you see that slight decrease at $9,000 in 2014. But as you see in 2010, it was $20,000, and then it came down a little bit in 2012 to $16,000. The Spring Arts Festival is consistent at $7,800. Now, going further down the findings, I briefly talked to Captain Ed Lardner in Lompoc PD, and I also looked at the School Resource Officers Program, which is called the SRO program. And there is some sort of a misnomer within the city that this is actually a grant, but which is really not true. It's not a grant program. What it is that there's two SROs provided or assigned to the schools, and each is being paid sort of half-time by the Lompoc Unified School District. So for a total of one SRO, so the Lompoc School District pays for one SRO, and the city pays for the second. And the costs that have been incurred by the city are fairly high, and here they are. We're looking at the cost to the city of Lompoc for officer number 1 as part of the SRO program. And as you can see, the salary and benefits, 2009-2010, you're looking at $97,205. 2013-2014, it comes up to $115. And the total over there is $522. But if you see the total city costs on the other side in the far right column, you're looking at $261,138. That is fairly significant for the last 5 years. And this is just for the part of one officer. This is the cost to the city of Lompoc for officer number 2 as part of the SRO program. Again, in 2009-2010, you had $89,818. If you look at 2013-2014, you're looking at $112. And at the far right, the total number there is $242. Again, that is fairly consistent as well. So my recommendations right now for the police department would be as follows. Looking at the fees and fines that need to be updated to reflect true costs and and a commensurate increase in revenues are as follows. And I've actually talked to Jennifer Chastain in the police department and discussed this pretty heavily and in detail. The first one is the police clearance letters, and I think the city attorney's office as well as the police department are jointly working on establishing a fee for this service, and City of Lompoc has not been charging for this service. The second one is the live scan fingerprinting or rolled ink prints. It has been suggested it go from $16 that it is right now to $22. The booking fees were updated 6 years ago at $130, and they also need to be increased. Police alarm permit renewal fees currently only $2, and they need to be increased. And the police department has suggested that this be an annual fee. Going further down the fees and fines, they've suggested that there be a loud party noise fee. Currently, the police department does not charge this fee, and other cities like Guadalupe and a few other cities around in Santa Barbara County are actually charging this. Similarly, photo CD, audio, video, and DVD, we don't charge this fee, and it's suggested that we start charging for this. Firearm impound fee, they're looking at changing laws regarding firearms, and so the City of Lompoc should be charging this fee according to the police department. Residential alarm fees, currently the police department does not charge this fee, and it's suggested that they do. The interesting one is the DUI cost recovery. We don't have too many of those, but when we do, they're pretty expensive. And right now, the city police department eats the cost, and those are based on actual costs. So we should look into that, into charging for DUI cost recovery as well. Coming to parking tickets, they're being recouped at about 50%. That's we're recouping those parking ticket fees at 50% through data ticket, as opposed to what it was before, where it was only 20% when it was done in-house. And ticket fees have decreased because fewer tickets are being written, which is a good thing. False alarm fees have also gone down, but those are because of lower infractions by businesses, which is also good news. And backlog on the collections aspect of the false alarm fees has also been taken care of, which is since 2010, which is also good news. The Flower Festival and Spring Arts Festival hosted by they're hosted by private organizations, and I'm recommending, and it also has been suggested by the Lompoc Police Department, that they be reimbursed either partially or fully by the festival boards because the costs are fairly expensive. Alternatively, the festival boards can and should opt for private security. Also, if you look at the full funding of that one SRO, we're looking at the cost to the city of Lompoc at $503,000 from 2009 through 2014, which is fairly high. That's $500,000. And per police department, these costs should be fully funded by the Lompoc School District for the comprehensive services that are provided by the police department. On a side note, the Police Foundation is also very active within the community, and I believe they can and should be used to their fullest potential as a revenue enhancement fundraising tool. And as an example, the second annual Coptoberfest that they hosted as a fundraiser brought in more than $16,000 in 2013. So I think we have some great revenue areas that we can look into, and these are some of them. I'm looking at miscellaneous findings as I go through what I'm finding throughout the city. As part of the Public Works Department, I went into the building division, and in early 2014, in July of 2014, the city administrator was notified of a formula error in the computer system for building and grading permits. And this was fairly substantial. The error was caught in a timely manner, and it saved the city about $48,000. Consequently, I did a quick control check, and it was a manual control check of the computer formulas to see if there are any more errors. And I did find a glitch in the grading permit inspection fee, which was the glitch was at about I think 1 million cubic 1 million cubic yards. And this formula is almost never used, but nonetheless there was an error there, and the base amount was set at $4.27 instead of $4,733, and that's fairly substantial. So now that I was informed that has been rectified in the system. Going further down the miscellaneous findings, I'm specifically looking at our billing systems and how to automate it or pay utility bills online, and this is my suggestion. City of Lompoc customers would be fairly relieved and excited about paying their utility bills online if they could, and it would save them money, time, and gas. Alternatively, permits, licensing fees, recreation program fees, and other fees could also be paid online through the system I'm suggesting. The automated payments would free up city staff to focus on other tasks while helping the city stay organized and streamlined. And then, of course, we wouldn't have to hire extra staff to count payments or reconcile checks or manually create reports. What I am suggesting is, and this was very exciting to me, and I think this is a very good interim thing we could do while we are looking into a new computer system, but this is something we could do in the interim and or carry over once we get our new computer system in, is use PayPal for local governments. And what I found very exciting about this is that PayPal for local governments is very compatible with the existing city website, which we already have in place, and it can be used online by just adding a yellow button, a PayPal payment button on the website. And it is easy to use, it is secure, it is inexpensive. It is also PCI compliant, so they take care of any kind of fraud screening, and that fraud screening is done at no charge, which is very good. Reporting and back office are also automated and easy to use. And the great thing is the pricing is fairly affordable. Those who receive payments pay a fixed percentage and a low fee on every transaction. There are no hidden charges. There's no monthly fee. There's no monthly minimum, no setup charge, and no cancellation charge. So this is a fairly win-win situation. I briefly looked at their monthly transactions and their fee per transactions, and this is the pricing that you see right in front of you. You're looking at $3.20 fee on a $100 transaction at $3,000 cap. from 3,000 to 10,000, you're looking at $2.80 fee on a $100 transaction, and 10,000 to 100,000, you're looking at a $2.50. So essentially, as the transactions go up in number, your fee actually goes down, which is, predominantly how these people work. You've got an 800 number and you've got a website there, and I think that this would be a very good idea in the interim to have something like this while we execute our new computer system in the interim. And as conclusion, I went through this presentation fairly quickly. I was sort of time-bound. The next departments that I am going to look at is ECD, their fees and revenues and other miscellaneous issues within ECD. I'm also looking at the utilities, build rates, and possibly a quality control check on their online formulas also. So this is the conclusion of my presentation, and I'm sure you have lots of questions for me. Thank you.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much for your work. Looks like we've got several people asleep at the wheel here. So as far as the TOT, it's almost embarrassing that we have hotel number 2 going $334,000. Now, maybe you don't know this, but maybe you do. How did we let this happen?
Well, without going into a lot of private details, I believe that hotel number 2 has been owing back taxes for the last 6+ years, and I think they're in bankruptcy. And so there's a lot of issues regarding the bankruptcy and how much they owe and what they can pay, what they cannot pay. So I think it's fairly complex. And I think that's where it is, and I think the city attorney's office will probably be able to shed more light on this.
Okay, and then hotel number 1 is what, $175,000?
Correct.
And over what period of time was that?
I am not particularly sure. I could find out for you, but those are back taxes that are owed by hotel number 1, and there's a contract that has been signed and in place, and they are making good on that contract as of right now.
Okay. Well, I guess you don't have to get back to me on that, but I'm hoping that we as a city are putting something in place right now that will not allow this to happen. Someone has to be watching this on a regular basis.
Right, and I think that's why I've suggested that we have something in form of policy or something like that.
Okay. Well, thank you. A couple other comments. The school officer, the SROs. I think maybe private security would be okay there, but I think there's a benefit to the city, and I think we need to weigh this. The benefit to the city of having an officer at the school, getting them to catch the crime before it's actually being committed outside or repeatedly, so there's some benefit to the city, but maybe the solution there is a private security company instead of putting one of our officers there, instead of just all of a sudden telling the school that it's all on them right now. So the last thing is, under the miscellaneous, the mistake for the 100 cubic yards of material from $4.27 to 4,000.
No, it's 1,000,000 yards.
A million yards, okay. But $4.27 to, instead of $4,000. That's huge.
Yes, and in defense of, what really happened there, unfortunately for us, we've never used that, at least so far.
Next question.
However, if we were to use that, that would be fairly catastrophic. That's a pretty big number difference. So I think that a quality control check of the formulas, a comprehensive quality control check of the computer formulas is definitely warranted, and I'm actually doing that right now.
And that's what I was going to recommend. I know, working in the medical industry for a number of years, just something we did on an annual basis. We just went in, manually verified every single one of our computerized calculations. And if you do it on a regular basis, you check it year after year after year, you don't come up with these mistakes.
Right.
So thank you for your report. Thank you for finding the mistakes that we've had, and continue the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for your presentation. What really sticks out to me is the bill payment online. I've been discussing that since I was first elected quite a while ago, and I know that there were some efforts and there were a lot of challenges associated with that. Our last city administrator, I think it was her intention to have done that, and it didn't happen. My only concern about PayPal, I think it's a very innovative idea, and thank you for bringing us the option, is I was just thinking, I don't know what the average city bill is, so I'll go based on what my city bill is, approximately $200 a month, which means the added fee would be $6.40 a month. That's enough of a disincentive to probably not pay it online. I know that seems silly, but when you think of the percentage of the fee versus how much the bill is, those fees are a little bit high, I think, for some of our customers, including myself. So just something to consider in the interim if that's our only option. It seems very simple to integrate. I was looking at their website online. That's definitely doable. But I don't know if our city administrator has any information, but I definitely think that that is really where we need to go next with online bill payment.
Yeah, my comment on that is ultimately just to reiterate what we had talked about before, that we are going through a process to select a new financing system. We have components of a system that go back, well, yeah, to where we're relying on Abacus as part of the system. Anyway, so we're going to update and modernize, and there's so much that's available, not just on the financial accounting side, but on customer information side. It's a very robust platform we'll end up with. And ideally, if we have the collective patience, I'd say the best thing we can do right now, we do have some online bill payment options available already that you can do through setting up automated payment plans and the like. But for people like me that like to go on and actually see my information and activate a singular transaction, we're really going to have that fully robust system. We need to wait till we have the underlying financial system to be able to get all the customer information available. But this is a concept for those people that are saying, because I hear on a regular basis people that really want to be able to have some mechanism now. So it's an option. I'm with you. It probably wouldn't be my choice, my personal selection, but for customers that would like it, we could probably make it available.
Thank you for your comments. I wanted to go back to the two things. The first with the special events, and I know we've had some discussion about that so far. I'm not sure that we necessarily don't want to have our police officers assist at certain events, but I think what it has to be is an intentional budgeting process versus an event that we know we do, but we don't set the money aside for it, and so it somehow gets absorbed year after year, which can cause budgetary issues, right? Is that the vein
right?
That you were...
Overall, there are not just these couple of events that we saw listed, but we've got some 12 to 20 different events that can go on that call for some level of support and activity for city resources to be provided. And as we've discussed lightly, we're at the time that we bring the next budget cycle forward and bring those recommendations. Our plan is to have a pretty full listing and inventory of that, including any other events you may want to suggest, because I believe we should be intentional about that. We have way too much money being needed for that is basically offline from the budget. It's always on a catch-as-catch-can basis. If we're going to do that, we need to be intentional. In some cases, what we'll do, I think the Flower Festival is a good example. We work with the promoters to understand overall, in this case, what their not only their overall service needs, but particularly what the security needs are for the event, and figure out, we're a potential provider for them for some of those services, and they also have other options available, including private security. And as long as they can meet a certain standard that we know is going to help assure the safety and good time of people participating, then we're willing to yield to those alternative forms. I think we'll always have, in that case, we'll always have a function, It doesn't have to be a fully present, fully involved function. They can certainly resolve some of those issues other ways. But it's a customized approach, I guess is what I'm saying. We're evaluating it on an event-by-event basis, figuring out where, if our resources are needed, whether we're talking police or public works or fire or whatever that is, what resources we need to provide, what they could fill in through volunteers, through hiring privately or doing something else, but overall to make sure that public safety, public health is secured, and that, you know, that the event ends up being the good time to be had by all that it's designed to be.
Yeah, definitely understood, and I think being more intentional about that is the right strategy. I know that that's not just with the police department, but with multiple departments that we've been facing that challenge. So.
Every department ultimately gets involved, yes.
Right, and I think that, you know, that's a very philosophical question, because, you know, the city is here at the service of the community, and so figuring out what that balance is as far as cost recovery and also service to the community. So a good conversation I think we'll have in the near future. The SRO program, I sort of see that as a really great relationship, because we're leveraging funding like we usually don't do, which is that we're able to have 2 officers because we have half funding instead of 1. And so I don't know if I would agree with eliminating or asking the school district to fund that position fully. I think that it's still a member of our Lompoc Police Department and still can be called on for other duties and service. So just a comment to make there. And then lastly, fees. I mean, I'm glad we brought this up, because I think that a lot of times what happens is, you know, as the years go on and inflation happens or all these other things that are happening, we're paying more for the same things, and we're losing this money falling through the cracks penny by penny, and that's impacting the city in one way or another. I mean, and maybe one fee to the next, because we're talking about a $2 fee, you know, it seems kind of silly, but in the aggregate, we realize that this really is impacting, and so I think that we do need to look at these things and reassess that, and figure out if we do need to institute new fees. I'm not sure we do, but at least look at those that are currently existing, and what a appropriate fee to be recovered is for that service.
And I'd quickly like to interject regarding the fees there. You know, Jennifer Chastain has looked at other cities, and they are, you know, already charging for some of those services that I mentioned. And so I think we're sort of behind the curve there. So we sort of really need to look at that.
And Councilmember Costa, just to amplify your comment there, not only does cost of living adjustments or, you know, inflation have an impact on fees, and the longer you go without examining those, the greater that cumulative impact is. But we also have situations where through legislation or other regulation and requirement, we have to do increased levels of service, and if we're not updating, you know, I think booking fees are a good example. There's a lot more that our police department has to go through in booking an individual than at the time that the fee was adopted. So we have, you know, methods and services, if you will, that they have to provide by law now that didn't exist back then. So we need to be concurrent on all of those things across the board. Thanks.
Good job. I think with regard to the school resource officer, I would oppose changing that from number one, because I've spent a lot of time talking to the resource officers, and I think one of the very core things that we get from that is a relationship with both high school and junior high school kids in the community, so that they have a relationship with the police department. It's a very positive thing. It's also, over the years, proved to be quite a place to gather intelligence about things that are happening, so that we were in the right place at the right time to prevent something. And at least from the high school teacher's standpoint, it's been a huge benefit for gang diversion, because it's just, the presence there solves the problem. Online payment, you know, I defer to you guys, whatever you think. But maybe, City Administrator, if you could talk just a second about the online payment that I know we do now, which is some kind of a check thing with your bank, and I don't use it, or maybe Brad wants to speak to it, just so.
Yeah, I'd rather defer to Brad on what's available right now for people that want an alternative to writing a check.
Mayor, council members, the city has a couple of different systems that are already in place that allow a customer not to write a check. One's a ACH process where they sign up and their bill is sent to them as normal, and at the end of the billing cycle that amount is charged to their bank account. We have about 600 customers that are already using that, and they've been using it for several years. About 2 years ago, we worked with our bank, Bank of America, to set up a concentrator system. So many people have online services through their own bank for their own banking account. You can pay your bills through your online bank portal. What Bank of America does is it converts that payment from a check, which we used to get, creates a electronic file for us, sends us the payment in aggregate, and sends us the file of the payment information, which we've set up to be entered in their billing system automatically. So we've eliminated about 3,000 checks a month from our process by utilizing this. The benefit to the customer is they don't have any fees. The benefit to the city is we don't have any fees on our side like we do with credit cards. We have about $100,000 of charges a year from customer using their credit cards to pay the bills. This system has we have about 15,000 customers, so 3,000 out of 15,000 is a pretty good number, about 20%. And that has been in place for about, like I said, 2 years. So it's not an online payment portal on our website, but it's as convenient to the customer because they're in their own account. They don't have to go to another site to make a payment. They can make multiple payments from their online portal for their own bank. So those are the two systems we have currently. And with Active Network, which we utilize for our recreation registration, Active Network has a online payment system. We've been working with them to set up a online portal for payments. We have to defer to our requirements for making sure our system is secure for police services. But once that's taken care of, we can utilize all the things that Active Network provides for us that they do now online.
Thank you.
And Mayor, if I could just add in response, because I know there's a couple of comments about the school resource officers. We're not making a recommendation per se right now. I thought it was important. I appreciate that Ms. Waugh brought up the concept to explain so that we're purposeful about how we go forward, what exactly the funding source is on that, because to the extent that maybe there was any misperceptions about grant funding and the like, to understand what the formulation is. When we bring this forward, it'll be particularly critical as we bring forward the next budget cycle, because as you know, we need to be intentional about each and every position throughout the city as we bring those forward. We want to make sure funding sources are understood and that the cause and the purpose is something we want to continue to carry on. Thanks.
And I think the concept of setting up a permit structure for residential alarms is outstanding. I know the police department has continuing issues with residential systems that false. I recall in the mid-'80s when we had permits issued for business alarms, and our current structure of paying after your second false alarm, the number of business false alarms dropped by in excess of 80%. So when you put a little emphasis on it, people tend to jump in there and take care of it. Councilmember Homdahl.
Yeah, one quick thing on the automatic payments. What's interesting is there's a lot of companies out there now that wants you to pay automatically, and they're charging you if you don't. So it could be another way to look at it. There's some charge, some different your programs that you take on. They have that set up right now, so that's something to look at. I've got a couple of those. I'm one of those that like to write a check. My wife likes to do it on the computer, and I may have to go her direction if I keep going like that. But I think we've got a lot of good things come up here tonight, and some changes had to be made. My concern is not that is why we haven't done some, especially on the hotels themselves, how they got along that far, and some of these other programs, and I think we ought to look at that. So I know we'll have some public comment, and I have some more to comment.
Okay. Well, I assume that you're going to go after all these recommendations that make sense and add that to your short things to do list.
Yeah, I think this was the program I was bringing forward. So yeah, I think I'm going to follow that.
We were pretty sure of that. Thank you, Portman. I appreciate it. Not on this. Okay, City Administrator, anything else?
No, thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
No, but thank you.
Okey-doke. All right. Next, we have oral communications, your opportunity to talk to us for 5 minutes about any subject. If you're here for an item that's on the agenda and you can wait, that would be good. If not, come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Dan McKenzie with Habitat for Humanity. I was here, I know it seems like yesterday, but I guess it's been 3 months ago, and I just want to come and give you an update. As I stated back then, when Habitat for Humanity builds a house, where it's actually 3 processes that run concurrently, and the construction is one of them. We also have the family selection, because we need to have the families picked before the first nail is driven. And then we also have fundraising. And while I regret to say that there hasn't been a lot of construction going on yet, family selection is going very well, and fundraising is also picking up considerably. We're doing much better on fundraising right now. We tried a mass mail appeal under the previous administration, and that didn't go very well, but we've got a barbecue going on now starting on Saturday. If any of you are in Santa Maria on Saturday, come by the store. If you haven't seen the new store, you want to come by and see it anyway. Yeah, come by, have a tri-tip sandwich or a veggie burger, and get a raffle ticket. We're doing a raffle for a $2,500 KitchenAid outdoor grill. So we'd like to see you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks for your good effort.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Lynn Whittemore, 512 South T Street in Lompoc, resident since 1964, property owner since 72. I'm here to seek some help with acquiring a variance. I'm one of the people who want to pay you some money. Maybe this is a good time to talk about this. I installed a hot tub in my house in 1978, 36 years ago. Did not get a permit because people did not do that in the 70s when the craze hit. In 2013 of March, the city became aware that I had a hot tub. And they said, well, we see you don't have a permit for this. Please give us a drawing for our records. I did. And then I got a letter that says, this is not quite clear enough. We need you to submit another drawing. And through this process, I've been talking to the mayor a little bit and kept him informed of what was going on. So I filled out a second, and then I filled out a third drawing for the city, because really what they want is an architectural drawing. They don't want a sketch from the homeowner. They want something they're used to, which is what they see with building. So what it gets down to is they want me to, when I built my hot tub, I put a hot tub, a deck, a changing storage room on it, and a heater pad. The building is now too large because over 10 years ago, a fence was deteriorating around my hot tub for privacy, and instead of replacing that 10-foot section of fence, I added onto my storage shed. I was wrong. I understand that. Should have came and got a fee. However, If you live in the south side of Lompoc and have a side street, which I do, the setback on a side street is 18 foot for your side yard. So now my hot tub and fence and deck and room is inside this 18-foot setback the city's required. I don't know what you're going to do with the 18 foot of my yard on a side street, but those rules do not apply to north of Ocean Avenue. Those apply to south of Ocean Avenue, Old Lompoc. According to the calculations I could figure out, the city has control over 3,000 square foot of my yard, which is bigger than my house. The city wants me to move the shed to the other side of my yard. Well, it's designed to be with the hot tub, and it's part of the hot tub deck. In reference to my heater pad, in 82 or 83, property behind me, which is farmland, Pasquini's had cattle on it. And it was annexed to the city. Property was sold, annexed to the city. They put in a housing tract. They graded. Now the neighbor behind me is 10 foot below me. So that forced me to put in another retaining wall. And in the process, they resurveyed, and all of us were stupid on South T Street, and we used a farmer's barbed wire fence as a property line. Well, that was not correct. So everyone lost imaginative 2, 3, 4, 5 foot of property. So now my heater pad is 2 foot too close to my yard. So they want me to move the heater pad 2 foot. It's sitting next to a chain link fence on top of a 10-foot retaining wall with a zero clearance fire heater. What I'm asking for is, I realize wrong with expanding that building. I would certainly like to keep my yard intact and keep everything in place. I'm told that there's no way to get a variance, and the setback is absolutely in stone. My neighbor's house, due to the wrong surveying of laying out the track in 1962, laid in my block, each house is off its pad by 1 foot. By the time it gets to my neighbor's house, his foundation is 2 foot from our fence line. His eaves are 1 foot from my fence line. I'm sure he got a variance when they put in a housing tract, and I don't think the city is going to ask him to move his house. I'm certainly willing and happy to pay the penalty for what I did wrong, but I certainly do not want to destroy my backyard. Now, I've talked to Mr. Boggs several times, and I finally, in one day, got 3 letters. One taped to my door, one sent certified mail, and one sent U.S. mail, telling me that they're going to file criminal charges against me for having this in my backyard. Every time the city contacted me, I contacted the mayor. At the time, there was a lot of things going on, and the city could not, or the mayor could not handle this right up front because other things happened. How about the fire we just had in the town? So I'd appreciate your consideration on granting me a variance of some kind or come to some equal solution to this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lynn.
Good evening. My name's Rodney Spooner. I live at 427 Clinton Street in Redwood City, California, which is up on the Bay Peninsula. I happen to be down visiting my parents, who have been residents of Lompoc since 1962, and I certainly enjoyed living here. Every day in Redwood City, the weather reminds me of Lompoc, so it's kind of with me wherever I go. I'm down visiting my folks, as I said, and I read in the Lompoc Record an article in the Sunday paper, Lompoc to look at impact user fees, and it says that the council members will be asked to approve from general fund reserves, blah, blah, blah. And it goes on to say that fees paid, okay, hang on a second. Federal reserves, including $40,000 from utility reserves. Now, I'm not sure, to me that would be like water, gas, electric, sewer, that sort of thing. Fees paid by the city's 4 utility service funds called enterprise funds for support services provided by city council staff, who will be reviewed by a second consultant. That concerns me only because the city of Riverside, where I lived formerly, was involved in litigation because they were in violation of Proposition 218, where they were taking money out of their water utility, for example. And Proposition 218 basically gave taxpayers the right to vote on all local taxes and requires taxpayer approval of property-related assessments and fees, which would include water, gas, sewer, and electric. And City of Riverside was in litigation, which they recently settled because they were taking money, essentially profits, out of their water utility company and depositing into their general fund without putting it on a ballot as a special tax for the citizens to vote on. So I just wanted to make sure that that you should be aware of it if you're not, and I hope that you, if not, will be in full compliance. Thank you.
Let me answer that for you. Yes, we understand that completely, and we would be in compliance. What this effort is to take a small amount of money from utilities to review not the rates, but the fees that the utility departments charge. So, for instance, if you're going to build a building, you have plan check fees from the utility departments and many other things, services that the utility departments render outside of rates, and to go through and review those fees. So the money taken from the utility departments is directly connected to the benefit that each utility department would get, to look at the fees, and then generally you get about a 100% recovery plus another 100%. So usually there's a pretty good return when you go through and do one of these fee studies, particularly since a lot of our fees haven't been revised since the 90s.
Okay, I understand that. As long as the money coming from the utilities is directly benefits the utility.
Benefits that particular utility. And if you pull a staff report online, it actually shows the individual amounts utility by utility because of that.
Okay.
Thank you very much, though. And welcome to Lompoc, and glad you enjoy the weather.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Nicholas Gonzalez, resident of Lompoc. I didn't intend on speaking tonight, but after hearing Mr. Lynn, I thought it'd be an opportune time to come up and express what I think is a need to revisit your code enforcement policy. I cannot tell you how many people, I'm in the lending business and work hand in hand with many of the realtors, of people are receiving code enforcement letters for items that many of us believe are way out of the scope of the original intent of the code enforcement policy. I don't believe that anybody wants to see blight in our town. I know the lending profession and the realtors definitely do not. Doesn't bode well for our business. But at the same time, I do not believe that we want to see a wild witch hunt. And quite frankly, often that's what we're seeing. The gentleman that just spoke is a perfect example. I could bring you the list of many more. But what concerns me most is that as we sat here through several meetings, both with the general plan and with code enforcement, we were assured that a term called legal non-conforming would continue to exist. And basically one of the things that I am seeing is that legal non-conforming items are being pursued by code enforcement. And so I would petition you, and I'm certain that you're going to be hearing from our industry as a whole, bringing you list of how this has kind of gone sideways on you, and you got a lot of people upset. So I would really petition you to revisit it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, my name is Atul Patel, resident of Lompoc. Unfortunately, I don't have time to stay for the new business item, AB 1600. I did see some emails at the front counter, and I'd like to reiterate that I would hope that the City Council and the Mayor would take into consideration from reinstating this till a further date, while certain projects are in the process of trying to get approved or trying to come to this community We all believe very strongly in Lompoc, and that's why we do business in Lompoc. And frankly, I think if you weigh the pluses and minuses of some of the businesses on a longevity of how much revenue they will generate for the city, and the short-term fee that you would receive from a street impact fee would outweigh significantly going into the future. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, staff, audience. My name is Frank Campo, resident of Lompoc. I want to talk about exciting things going to happen here in Santa Barbara County, actually it's going to be in Santa Maria, in less than 2 months. That's the Veterans Stand Down. Now, just let everyone know what a stand down is. This concept was started almost 30 years ago in San Diego by a couple of gentlemen that saw a need of homeless veterans that were going around town, going without services. So they thought, let's provide services to these veterans. They pulled community resources. They provided legal counsel. They provided health, medical screening for these veterans, jobs, clothes. Santa Barbara County is going to be having its third stand down October 18th in Santa Maria. And I just want to tell you of a need that they have. They're asking for donations of clothes, new clothes, and primarily looking for towels, socks, underwear, T-shirts, sweatshirts, but they're also looking for hygiene products, products for women, care products, shampoo, sunscreen, liquid soap, bar soap, sunscreen, toothbrushes, and toothpaste. Now, they've identified several collection points around the county, and one of those collection points is at the Chamber of Commerce. So Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, if you have donations, you can drop them off there. They're also doing some training. If you want to get involved, be a volunteer, come down, work for the day. 2011-12, we had our first stand down. We had over 900 volunteers and about 200 veterans show up. So the community was really involved in it. So they're doing some training, some grassroots training to help do some outreach to veterans to let them know of resources available. And I believe C3H is coordinating that. But they're having one here in Lompoc Thursday, September 18th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. That'll be at the Lompoc Public Health Room, 301 North R Street. And they're also, if you want to come work the day, Saturday in Santa Maria, they have training you have to go to. So there's 2 dates set aside for training. They're both in Santa Maria at the Board of Supervisors hearing room. The first date is Tuesday, September 23rd from 12 to 1. And the second date is Tuesday, September 30th from 5:30 to 6:30. And I know from Lompoc we've had probably about 20 veterans the last 2 years attend the event, and we also send buses from Santa Barbara, from Lompoc up to Santa Maria. It's a really well-attended event, and it's there to help out our veterans. So that's it for that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Campo, real quick, I'm assuming that if I don't want to go out and shop for socks and underwear and soap and toiletries, I can donate cash.
You can donate cash. I know the board of supervisors, actually Supervisor Lavanito has been spearheading this. I'm sure the chamber might take a donation as well.
Okay. So, I mean, so people could write a check, get it over there. Who would they make the checks out to?
The Good Samaritan Shelter is the financial rep for this event.
So if it's Good Samaritan, I'm assuming then that it is a 501c3, so someone can take a tax write-off for it. Tax
and there's letters as well, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks.
Anyone else at this time?
Can you do online donations with the chamber?
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, City staff, Lompoc community, Ken Austini, Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau. Quick update from my last report to you back in early July. Some of the things Frank already touched on that I was going to talk about, but I'll talk about a little bit more. Back in early July, attended some planning meetings for the Public Safety Training Center grand opening in Santa Maria. I was a part of that committee and helping make that event happen. 4th of July, of course, we had our annual 4th of July concert in the park in Centennial Park. sponsored by our Military Affairs Committee. It was a nice event, a nice day, and a kids' bike parade, and it was just a nice time. On the 8th of July, I attended the Vandenberg Air Force Base newcomers briefing. I do those twice a month. Opportunity to meet all the new folks coming to Vandenberg and tell them about our community. So I really enjoy that. On the 9th of July, attended the Lompoc Tourism Investment District, our hotel association that I know you're all aware of. I'm on their board, so I attend all their meetings, or all the ones I can get to at least. Same day, I attended the Boys and Girls Club Community Council meeting here in Lompoc. And then C3H with Councilmember Costa, a member of that committee, and working with her and a lot of other folks to help the homeless issues in our community. On the 10th of July, we had our last Old Town Prep meeting, getting ready for the opening on the 11th. It was our first Old Town market this year. Also that same day, our Military Affairs Committee met, and I think I shared before that we have a new chair of that committee, Sylvia King, and she's doing just a fantastic job and really kind of refreshing that committee and making some things happen. So very happy about that. Also on the 11th, I provided an information table at the Piper Cub Fly-In, and they're in their one of the hangars for folks coming to the community with some tourist information, some local things to do, the murals, the mission, skydiving, all that kind of thing. So. On the 12th of July, we did a ribbon cutting, and new salon Attitude Salon moved on into the Northside Shopping Center, so we did a ribbon cutting for them. 14th of July, the Economic Vitality team met in Solvang, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, just so you guys can understand what that's all about. Ongoing meetings, but more to that. Same afternoon, I met with the Allen Hancock Foundation here in Lompoc with the chair of that group, or the CEO of that group, Jeff Cotter, and we were interviewing candidates from Lompoc to be part of that foundation. Councilmember Lingle was there, and a number of folks, and we actually have at least one other person willing to serve from Lompoc on that foundation, and that was the whole point when I got on there, was to get more representation from Lompoc, but there's not a whole lot on there. Of the 25 members, I think we have 3, so we're working to get more. So I think we have at least one coming now. That same evening, I met with the Village of Dirtbags and Cacho Osachi in our office to talk about the Burton Mesa issues and the use of that area. A great meeting. He was listened very intently to them and heard their concerns and thoughts. So we'll see where that goes from there. On the 15th of July, I attended a change of command ceremony at Vandenberg for the hospital commander, Colonel Jones. She was leaving and going to Germany, so I attended that event. And then to the stand down on the 16th, I attended the stand down transportation meeting, and this year I was able to procure transportation from Lompoc. Peace Lutheran Church has offered to let us use their bus to transport the Lompoc veterans. Last year we had 10 folks from Lompoc go there and had to send a bus from Santa Maria to pick them up. So this year we have our own bus. It's handicap accessible, and it's good. I'm very happy they've agreed to do that. On the 17th, I attended the Corley Awards at Vandenberg. That afternoon, I put on my dirty clothes and went out and hauled bales of hay for the Old Town Market hayride. So one of the fun things I get to do. It reminded me of my childhood. A little heavier, these bales of hay now, though. That evening, we had a mixer at Guild Financial here in Lompoc. On the 18th, we had an Old Town Market event. Of course, I wasn't there. I was in San Diego enjoying my grandbaby's first and second birthdays. Okay, then again on the 22nd of July, another Vandenberg Air Force Base newcomers briefing. Then on the 23rd, a stand-down meeting in Santa Maria. And again, as Frank mentioned, we are now a collection point at the chamber between 8 and 5, not 9, 8 and 5. We collect things and we store them, and then when I go over or if I get too much stuff, they'll come pick it up for that event. So if you have anything, bring it by. We'll take it. That evening, we had our chamber annual dinner and awards. I know some of you were there, and that was another good evening, and we recognized some worthy folks in our community, Man and Woman of the Year, Volunteer of the Year, and Business of the Year. So that was a good night. Next day, on Friday, I was able to take our kiosk down to Ryan Park and put information all over it to provide for the folks at the dog show. And there were brochures taken, and I was able to get Many of you have seen our goofy-looking little kiosk, but I get flowers donated by Home Depot to decorate that to make it look kind of nice and provide lots of information. So that same afternoon, I met with Rick Rance from our Allen Hancock College campus to talk about the possibility of getting food up there at the campus. That's a big issue with the students. There is no food up there right now, other than maybe vending machines. So that's kind of in the works, but they have, of course, a governmental process they have to go through with bids and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. 25th, another Old Town Market event. We have 2 more weeks to go, so that's moving along. On the 26th, attended the car show at Albertsons. The benefit for the Motorsports Park. Another, tremendous car show they had that day, so that was nice. On the 28th of July, I met with some of the city staff and police department to talk about the Alumni Association's cruise night. There were some issues with that event, and I think by meeting and talking that those things will go a lot smoother next year. And there were some issues, they were aware of it, and they're willing to make some corrections to make that a good event and not have people violating traffic codes and that kind of stuff. That same afternoon, I went to the Federal Correctional Complex Community Council Relations meeting at the prison with Warden Fox. Another good event to hear about what's going on out there. 31st, of course, was the Allen Hancock College Public Safety Training Center VIP grand opening. I was, again, part of that committee and helped get the food vendor out there for the event. It was a very good day. I know many of you, again, attended that event. Again, the 1st of August, we had another Old Town Market every Friday. Then, of course, on Saturday the 2nd was the grand opening for the public for the Public Safety Training Center. And guesstimates from the last meeting I went to after the fact, it's kind of a wrap-up meeting, we had over 1,200 people visit the facility. I think everything very smooth from what I saw. It was a good day. The weather was nice, a lot of good fun stuff going on. So hopefully all of you were able to make that. Again, on the 4th of August, we have our weekly Old Town Market meetings to talk about the last week and what's coming next week, so we're all on tap with that. And on the 5th of August, again, the Tourism Investment District, the Hotel Association, we met for our regularly monthly meeting, and they're moving along real well with the marketing plan and hiring a marketing company, and things are going real smooth for that group. Also met that same afternoon at the Rec Center with a number of folks from around the community to talk about hosting, Lompoc being a host city for Special Olympic teams, and I think unfortunately that did not work out. Again, it was very late in the process when we started, but we tried, we met, we talked, and tried to pull it together, but it didn't quite work. So on the 6th of August, I attended a Northern Santa Barbara County Economic Alliance and United Way event for Workforce and Literacy Initiative for Santa Barbara County. It was very, very interesting. I'm not sure if any of you were there or not. I don't remember seeing you there, but it was a very worthwhile event, and I think hopefully something will come from this in helping develop a better workforce in our community. 7th of August, was able to help the fire station, the fire department, do a ribbon cutting for their new brush truck. What a nice piece of equipment, and I know the fire department is very proud to have that piece of equipment. Again, 8th of August, another Old Town Market event. Then on the 9th of August, I was able to attend the Lompoc Unified School District Community Center ribbon cutting at El Camino School and their open house. So another, I think, just a tremendous addition to our community for our workforce in training and helping get the skills to have a good workforce. So we're very happy to be a part of that. And then that afternoon, attended the police department and fire department car show at Ryan Park. Man, I couldn't believe the cars. The very first car I ever remember as a kid was there. My parents, a 1949 Chevy. It was pretty cool to see that. The guy goes, "You want to sit in it?" And I go, "Well, I had to sit in the back." And I never got to sit in the front. So that was pretty cool. On the 10th of August, I attended a dinner at Lieutenant General Raymond's at Vandenberg in honor of Bob Hatch and all the things that he has done throughout the years to help support the military community. And I know Bob is going to stay very active in supporting especially our military community. Again, 12th of August, Vandenberg Air Force Base newcomers briefing. They come along twice a month. That afternoon, we had again, our Old Town Market planning meeting for the next week, and everything's moving along smooth with that. The 14th of August, attended the Allen Hancock Foundation meeting over in Santa Maria. Again, that's where I was talking before. We had interviews in Lompoc. Bob attended that meeting, so we're having some more Lompoc representation on that committee. The 15th of August, helped do a ribbon cutting for the Champion Center. Just another great thing happening in Lompoc, so we're very happy to be a part of that. On the 18th, this Monday, we had the first Economic Vitality group meeting in Lompoc. All the chambers throughout Santa Barbara County, except Santa Maria at this time, attended that meeting. And that's all about the chambers coming together with committee members. Tom Davidson's a member from Lompoc as part of that. About how do we get businesses that come to Santa Barbara County to stay in Santa Barbara County. If they come to Santa Barbara and they don't fit in Santa Barbara, well, why not come to Lompoc, or why not come to Buellton, or whatever. So that's kind of the whole point. It's still very early in the process. It's being funded by the county initially, but I think it's a good initiative, and I think it's going to go a long way to help the entire Santa Barbara County. Let's see. Councilmember Holmdahl, I haven't forgot about Sideways. We're still working with the committee, there's a number of folks, including led by the Santa Barbara County Film Festival folks. So we're working that, and there's some plans getting ready to take place here very soon with that. And then last but not least, our semi-annual report to you guys should be coming soon. I don't know if Teresa, you got it? Okay. It just was sent to her probably the day before yesterday, so that should be coming anytime. Questions?
Boy, I think you answered them all, but two things. A lot of positive comments on the Old Town Market reconfiguration with the produce and with everybody else. And, just on average, how many people do you see at a newcomer's briefing?
It's interesting. It varies anywhere from maybe 20 to 40, but I'm surprised there's that many people moving every 2 weeks. So you figure that many, we're looking at anywhere from, say, 50 to close to 100 a month. And that's not just military. There are some civilians in that group also.
Well, good things. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, council members, Jim Mosby, resident of Lompoc. A couple of weeks ago, I had an excellent opportunity. I was approached by a semi-pro football team looking for a place to go, and was able to bring them to Lompoc. And Saturday before last, they had their first opening game. I know the mayor and Councilmember Starbuck were able to make it out there and watch the team really represent. The Central Coast Seminoles here came in, was it 44-8 was their opening game to really represent the Lompoc Valley and to come here and to play some really hard-hitting football. And it was really a good event. And I'm happy to bring them, along with them, bringing the rest of their team members here to Lompoc as well. And without saying much more, I just want to introduce the co-owner, Mark Gomez of the Central Coast Seminoles.
Thank you, Jim, Mayor, council members. We would just like to invite you guys out to come see us, members of the community. Come see us. We're over here at Mosby Park, right off the 246. Number 2 River Park Road is the address. Like Mr. Mosby said, it's high flying, it's fast, it's live, it's real, it's full contact. And we are the Central Coast Seminoles, and we are happy to be on the Central Coast and got a home. Mr. Mosby was very nice and generous and has given us a home, and we'd like to say thank you, and we're very happy to be in Lompoc.
When's your next game?
Our next game is this Saturday, 3 p.m. It is last year's championship game, played over again this year, so it's going to be a very, very eventful and big high-flying game this weekend. We lost that game by 6 points, so we're looking to get our get back this game.
I like your colors. Central Coast Seminoles is good, but Lompoc Seminoles would probably be better.
There you go.
Hey, we get the right
colors.
I'll change my name to the Lompoc Seminoles.
Where are the teams from that you play? Are they from the other areas in California?
This weekend we're playing a team out of Palm Springs. They're called the Desert Chiefs. They'll be coming up in buses. They got good backing. They're, I believe, sponsored by the Tachi. I want to say this right, Tachi Casino, I believe. So they have backing. They have really good coaches. They got they're a really good team. They're a really, really good team. We handed them the win last year, and we don't plan on doing that again. Central Coast Seminoles can be followed on Facebook under that name, Central Coast Seminoles. All of our information that I get from league, other teams, I directly put it out there. My teammates are, my team looks at that for information for the week coming. It's a good way to follow us. All of our events are put on there.
Where do the team members reside? Are some of them here in Lompoc or Santa Barbara, or where does everyone live?
I've had alma mater from Lompoc High School. I've had alma mater from Cabrillo High School. I've had alma mater right now, I believe, out of Santa Maria High School. The majority, I've got about 10 good guys that come out of the LA area. I've got about 10 guys coming out of the Ventura area, and I got about 10 to 15 guys out of the Central Coast area. Our name for the past 5 years has been getting better every year. First year we missed the playoffs by a game. Next year we were in it. We lost first round, and every year we've been steadily growing in our short 5-year tenure.
Yeah, outstanding. My only advice I'd give is bring your own chair.
Bring your own chair. Yeah. But it is a good and fun, eventful. The whole family. It's good. It's a big, huge grass area that Jim has there, and we had a lot of fun last week.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One more thing to do, just if you think there's nothing to do in Lompoc.
Pam Wall, resident of Lompoc. I just want to take a minute and invite everybody out to an event that's taking place on Monday. Couple meetings ago, Bonnie Campbell from the food bank gave a presentation to the city council and talked about some of the stats for Lompoc, and one of them was hunger in Lompoc. We are the #1 city suffering from hunger in the Santa Barbara County. 50% of our kids are hungry. It was also mentioned when the seniors report was given to the city that for the first time, food was the #1 concern for our seniors. I read an article that just came out a couple days ago about our military. Since you've mentioned the stand down, it's timely, that many of our retired and current military have to rely on the food bank to supplement their food. So hunger is a real issue. As a result of Bonnie's presentation to the City Council, an impact group was formed immediately to discuss this issue and address how we are going to reduce or eliminate hunger in Lompoc. So we've met a couple times. We have a good committee together to work on this. But the next step is a town hall meeting that will take place on Monday at 6 o'clock at the New Life Christian Church on C Street. I think it's 815C or 816C. You can't miss it, the big white church there in the auditorium. And we would invite everybody to participate and really encourage members of the community to come out and address this. I'm sure lots of us know people who struggle with this issue. And a lot of times people sit up here and direct top down what people down here need. And that is not the intent. We want to involve the community and input in how to best address these needs. So, again, if you'd share that word and invite everybody out Monday, the 25th, 6 p.m. at the New Life Christian Church. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one rise, we'll close oral communications and we'll come back to the council. And our next item is the consent calendar. We have approval of expenditures, a payroll voucher for $1,003,000, a voucher register for $924,000, a voucher register for $166,000, a voucher register for $423,000, a voucher register for $166,000. I will not participate in the vote for Smitty's Towing on credit card purchase of $1,302.50. Item number 2, authorize the replacement of the live scan fingerprint equipment. This has been discussed. We have equipment that's has high maintenance costs, and we have the ability to replace it rather than repair it and save some money. Item number 3, execution of documents for application for the State Department of Transportation matching funds for the Federal Aviation Administration. And this was, if you were here for the Airport Commission meeting, this is a grant for the airport apron repaving project. Last repaved back in the 80s. And then item number 4, award of project number FY12S2, the North Avenue Bridge Preventive Maintenance Project. This is about a $47,000 project with a $13,000 reserve and unfortunately $15,900 worth of environmental monitoring. We have to pay somebody to stand there and make sure nothing drips off the bridge. Number 5, award of professional contracts in preparation of the 15-17 budget. And item number 6, adoption of ordinance number 160714, adopting amendment 2 to the Burton Ranch specific plan regarding an alternate mitigation measure that was previously approved by the Planning Commission and previously heard by this council, so it's a second reading. Is there an item a council member would like to pull? Councilmember Starbuck.
I'd like to pull item 5.
Okay. I would too, and I would judge by Councilmember Costa's light that she was the third on that. Okay, so item number 5 is pulled and will appear at the end of the agenda. So at this point, I accept a motion for the balance of the consent calendar. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lingle, I didn't see your light.
No, I just turned on. I was going to move.
Okay.
I move to accept the consent calendar with the exception of item number 5.
Second.
Okay, and is there any other discussion on the consent calendar? And could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Thank you. And now we come to item number 7, reinstatement of the AB 1600 development impact fee for street improvements and adoption of ordinance 594714. And Mike?
Good evening. Mike Luther, Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer. So I'm here tonight to discuss rescinding resolution number 570411 to reinstate AB 1600 development impact fees collection for the street improvement fee. In December of 2009, Council suspended the collection of the street improvement fee as a development incentive. And in March of 2011, Council approved a resolution which extended the suspension indefinitely until staff was to return with a revised methodology for the calculation of the fee based on the revised general plan update circulation element. So in November of 2013, that phase 1 of the comprehensive general plan update adopted the circulation element. So as part of that adoption, the new circulation element eliminated the east-west river crossing project, which is referred to generally as the Central Avenue extension. So staff recalculated the fee with that new information, and what we came up with is a 45.4% lower fee than the current fee of, the current fee is at $4,907. The new proposed fee, if reinstated, would be $2,679 per peak hour vehicle trip generated by the development. So during the suspension of the collection, it's estimated that approximately $2.8 million of street impact fees have not been collected as a result of the suspension. So during the process of bringing this item back to council, notices were sent out to basically the developers, engineers in town that are working on development projects, notifying them that this item would be coming to council tonight. I received 3 phone calls, 2 emails regarding the proposed action. One of the calls was from a local engineer. The second call was from an architect. Both of these calls were regarding the same project. They were both inquiring how the reinstatement would affect the project as far as costs. I also received I've been talking to another developer via phone who basically expressed to me that he did not support the reinstatement at this time. He believed that the street improvement fee is needed, but he just felt that the timing was wrong. And then I received an email yesterday from another developer in town basically expressing the same statement. He additionally made a suggestion that if it was reinstated, that it take effect 12 months after the reinstatement versus the proposed 60 days as required by law. And then my final email response that I received came from a member of the Economic Development Committee who strongly opposed the reinstatement of the fee based on economic considerations. He also pointed out that the fee schedule that's attached to the staff report is a little misleading. So I worked with Brad this afternoon, and we put that up, Chris? To revise the schedule to make it look, I guess, a little not smaller, but so basically it was a little misleading under the street improvement fee and the traffic signal fee columns where it says varies right now. Those had numbers in there, which was misleading because when you go over to the left-hand side of the column where it says development units, everything below residential is based on 1,000 square feet, where the street improvement fees and the traffic signal improvement fees are based on trips generated. So we just took those out because they vary by project. They're project specific except for the residential. Those are fixed. So hopefully that clarifies that issue a little bit. But so get to the recommendation. Staff recommends that council receive any further public comments on the item and then consider staff's recommendation of rescinding resolution 5947. I'm sorry, adopting resolution number 594714, which will rescind the previous resolution number 570411 and reinstate AB 1600 development impact fee collection for the street improvement fee, or provide staff alternate direction. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Mike, could you, and I gave you this question in advance, so it doesn't, just so everybody doesn't think it's a little deep. Could you talk about the projects that the $2.8 million in street fees that were waived related to, please?
Which specific projects?
Yes, please.
Let's see, I have 151 single-family residents. There's a 60-unit apartment building, 2 Habitat for Humanity units, 6 units on Apricot for the Housing Authority. And then there's the Lompoc cooling facility, oncology facility, Walmart expansion, Rocketown, Chrysler, Longoria Winery, the mini storage that's under construction out on Bryan Creek Way, the hangar at the airport, and then there was a list of about 8 projects that were included in a previous staff report back in 2011.
And the 60-unit apartment, that's the senior apartments at 7th and Ocean,
Yes.
isn't it? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the $2.8 million, does that reflect the new rate or the old rate?
That's an estimate. I used a previous rate just as kind of an average. That's why I say approximate, but I didn't figure out the exact fee.
So that was at the old rate?
That was at actually the previous, so it would have been
4,400.
It was 4667.
Yeah. Okay. And I think just for the council's edification, I think we might have if we had been going to reimpose this at some earlier point, I think we probably would have adjusted it because the Central Avenue extension was taken out quite a long time ago.
Was actually just approved in November.
Yeah, the council actually took an action to take it out more than 2 years ago. So if we had been going to bring that fee back, I think we would have considered that along the way. Could you just describe basically the methodology that you used to change it from 45.4%?
Well, the original fee was established during the, with this report. So the November 2003 impact fee study report. So I used that original calculation, eliminated the one of the 3 projects that was in that fee.
So it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And then it's obviously been inflated for inflation.
Okay. The other the other project that's on there now, I think, is the O Street north-south upgrade, isn't it? That one of the large projects that's in there.
It's north-south arterial widening, yes.
But I think that was that designated for O Street, or is it a floater?
It's not really designated, but that was the intended street.
So it could be there, or it could be another street. Okay. And what was the third item?
It was 8th Street corridor. I got it written down here.
Volume improvement.
Let me get the exact one.
Okay.
North 8th Street capacity improvements.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Luther, just a little bit as to the thought for bringing this back to possibly reinstate it at this point. I was a member of the council in 2009 that asked us to consider suspending the fees, and we did it specifically because the economy was suppressed. We were looking at generating and influencing some businesses to come at this time. So why now? Do we feel the economy has turned around enough that we don't need this anymore? So I'm just concerned about the timing.
Well, it's actually, my understanding is it's being brought back because that was the direction the council gave in March of 2011 when they extended it.
Okay.
Was that once the general plan circulation element was updated, they wanted to bring this back.
Okay. The other thing is the $2.8 million. Is there one project, like we mentioned the Walmart expansion, was that a large percent of that one project?
Walmart, so Walmart had a traffic study, so they would have generated 159 peak hour trips at the fee at $4,667. Their impact would have been $742,000.
Okay, so about a quarter of it then, 25%. And then, but of the $2.8 million that potentially, I mean, we don't know if all these projects were developed because we had suspended the fees. We have no way of knowing that.
No.
Do we have any way, all right, we don't. Do we have any way of knowing what benefit these projects have brought to the community? So in other words, we are only seeing one side of the coin right now. We're seeing that the impact fees have cost the city $2.8 million for the suspension. But we're not seeing the side of the coin that says, because we suspended the fees, we have brought new businesses to town that have generated X number of jobs, X amount of dollars. Do we have any numbers on that?
I have no way to calculate that.
City Administrator.
Yeah, Councilmember Lingle, I don't believe there's a way to cause and effect track that sort of response anyway.
Well,
certainly not from our engineering group, but I don't believe in any capacity we have a way of doing that.
Okay. And I agree with you, but would it be safe to assume that the city has benefited during this slow economy during the past 5 or 6 years? Is it safe to say that the city has definitely benefited from the suspension of these fees?
I think it's safe to call that an assumption.
Well, of course, of course it is an assumption.
I'm not prepared to agree with that assumption.
Okay?
Mike, offhand, do you know what the savings to the hospital was? Because they had a large traffic impact fee that was
236,000.
Good job. Okay. All right. Well, anybody else? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. I know I had this information somewhere, but I didn't see it in the staff report. What's the current balance of the street improvement impact fee account?
It is $2,004,923.
Sorry, so 2.4 million.
No, 2,004,000.
Oh, 2,004,000. Okay. Which seems like a large number, but in regards to maintenance of streets, can you give us an idea of what that amount of money would actually do?
Well, these fees don't pay for street maintenance. They pay for improvements due to increased traffic.
Right, but when we're talking about the improvement at Central and H, this amount wouldn't even cover that improvement, correct?
That's about what it's estimated at right now, yeah, $2 million.
Okay, so we have enough in the bank to do one of our two major improvements that we're looking at. You know, we've said for it's been not collected for 5 years, which would have garnered about 2.8 million, which I'm assuming would have been enough for the other scheduled improvement. Or what's the other scheduled improvement at? I'm trying to figure out if we do it now, when will we have the money in the bank to do that other needed improvement?
Well, the project you're talking about isn't entirely street improvement fee. A lot of that's a traffic signal improvement also. So really there's developments that are paying for that. That's kind of a different issue. I mean, the project that's listed in the street improvement fee is corridor improvements.
Corridor improvements.
Street widening over a long
Street widening, sidewalks, pedestrian enhancements, potentially intersection enhancements at George Miller Drive.
Mm-hmm. Right, not for current existing infrastructure, but for new infrastructure. Yes. Yeah, we've been over that quite a bit with impact fees, I have a feeling. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, if we have the projects lined up.
I can give you the number that's listed in the impact fee.
Sure.
Report that generated it for that project. If I can find it here. I had it. I thought I tabbed it. Let me see.
What are you looking for, Mike?
So when you look at you're talking about the North H Street capacity improvements. So the project estimate that was used to develop that fee was $22 million. But the proportion of that $22 million that they determined was developer responsibility was 40%. So we're trying to pay for $8.8 million. In 2003 numbers, you know, that's inflated cost.
And when are we anticipating that that's going to be needed?
Well, it's all based on general plan build out. So at this point, it's the general plan's 2030.
I'm just trying to get in my head, you know, I know that every year it changes because we can't anticipate development ultimately, and so we don't know, but I'm trying to figure out, you know, between now and then, how far we are away, what we have in the bank now, what it would take to get there, if we can push this out to continue using it as an incentive.
But by pushing it out, you're losing the opportunity to collect the fee. I mean, every developer that develops, that's a lost opportunity.
Absolutely. You say lost opportunity, we call it a business incentive, right, or developer incentive. So definitely different perspectives, but I get what you're saying. So I'm trying to rationalize this in my head, right? If we need to come up with 8.8 plus inflation, so maybe 10, 15 million by build out at 2030, and we're looking at 16 years. And this year, for example, we said we lost out on what, 2.8 million? 2.8 million, right? So assuming that development increases, yeah, exactly, but that is, if you consider about 2 million even a year, how long would it take us to get to 8 million, you know, by 2030? That's the math that's going on in my head. I hope that makes sense. If not, that's okay too. So the other question that I wanted to ask, I'm going to think about that for a minute. The other question I wanted to ask was, in the staff report, it's that there would be no impact to those who have pulled building permits. And so I was just curious why this threshold was chosen as opposed to something else like those who have the already approved vesting tract maps.
Well, the vesting tract map already locked them in at the current developer fee at that time. So say a development was approved in 2005, they're locked in at the 2005 fee schedule.
But for those who were in 2010 or 9 when the fee was waived or suspended?
Yeah, so at the time that council authorized the suspension, it's my understanding that it was basically an incentive to get people to pull building permits. So if you already pulled a building permit, you shouldn't have to. It's not very fair to charge somebody after the fact that.
I totally agree with you. I'm just wondering if there's a process before the building permit that after approval, that there's maybe some people in that limbo period that didn't think that they were going to have this fee, and if we reinstate it, tonight, which would be taken effect in 30 or 60 days, that would then have to pay the fee. Does that make sense between approval and pulling building permits?
Yeah, so there is a 60-day period right now. Assuming it was approved per staff, it wouldn't take effect until October.
Right, but I'm talking about the project. So say there was I don't know, I'm assuming that there's some project somewhere because we got an email about it that has an approved vesting tract map.
Yeah, so for example, there's Coastal Vision out here at 12th Street, 12th and Laurel. That's an approved project from 2005. So obviously he's not ready to build right now. So there's the project Burton Ranch at the Y. So those are the types of projects that are approved currently.
But I'm wondering if there's been anything since 2009 through yesterday with this, and they went through the process with the assumption that this fee wouldn't have to be paid. There is. So
there could be. I don't know that it would be a good assumption because council's direction was it was always a temporary suspension. It was never a permanent.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And so, even if we decide to reinstate tonight, I want to be sure that those who are kind of in that, I want to say that middle space, aren't being penalized either, just like those who have already pulled building permits. I'm going to leave that there, but we'll come back to that. Thank you.
City Administrator.
Mayor, if I might, if I could backtrack just one. On reflection sitting here, I think I was a little curt in my response to Member Lingle. I want to apologize for that. Allow me to expand. While I don't know what the upside benefits could be from what we've done, hypothetically, what you would consider to be the upside benefits is if we knew of those projects that Mr. Luther listed, if we knew there were projects that occurred because of this waiver that would not have gone forward without it. If we had that information, then I'd be able to point specifically, this waiver led to this benefit, and whatever other multiplication and other economic circulation benefit that would have. So if not, then all it did something different. So for instance, you mentioned one housing tract had 150 units or something like that?
No, that's the number of building permits that have been finalized since.
If there was a housing tract that had X number of houses, and if they would have gone ahead in either way, whether they were paying or not paying, then we did not create an economic incentive to have those built because they would have occurred anyway. What we did was add to the profitability of the project. So to the extent that those profits were then circulated to the economy, we had some sort of benefit from that. But it's not as though that in itself created jobs or triggered other economic activity. So when I said it's only an assumption, there's not a way we can measure. It's just because we don't ultimately know. We'd only have the hearsay of what someone might tell us about, yeah, that was a project that was so closely teetering that this fee being excluded made the difference. So that's my response should have been more complete. Thank you.
Well, I would say based on my discussion with one housing project here in town, when they were looking at purchasing the entitled property, which actually already had the utilities in place, that the waiving of the impact fee was extremely critical, and it was probably the difference between it penciling and not penciling, because it was that close, and I'll talk about another one later. The other thing I would say, and I realize this is work done by the engineering department, but I think this should have been sent to the Economic Development Committee to be looked at before it came to us. Councilmember Starbuck.
Okay, I'm going to go back to 2011. Same discussion. I'm going to read the staff conclusion on this report at that time. This came from our Community Development Department and our Public Works. During the current economic climate, the city would be well served by continuing suspension of the street improvement fee in an effort to provide an economic development stimulus measure for new development. If the economic situation were to improve drastically before the general plan update is completed, then the council retains authority to discontinue the suspension of this impact fee. My personal belief on this is we can't have this impact fee out forever. But for us to give a few days notice and then cut it off 60 days from now is not a good way for us to conduct business, and it doesn't really indicate business friendly in my eyes. I think that I'm going to invent a word called, maybe we could feather in these projects, give a predetermined amount of time. If you do not have your permit within a year, if you have not pulled a grading permit within 18 months, then you're not eligible for the waiver of this fee. This is a good way to conduct business. It puts everybody on notice more so than a piece of mail and 10 days on that. At that point, I think that we may want to go ahead and consider with our carrot for these people that wish to develop homes. I'm going to go right back to September 17th, 2013, when Mr. Wilkie gave a very impressive presentation on AB 1600 and the waiver of fees and how the fees are determined, etc. I think that the carrot that this council could provide at this point would be probably to offer our second most expensive impact fee, parkland impact fees. This is what we need to buy property. Do we need more parks? Absolutely not. Our ratio of parks to people is probably more than anyone else in California. What this does do for developers, though, single family impact fee per unit is now $3,800 and some dollars, and this is based upon September or June 11th, our annual SB 1693 compliance report, which we're, I'm only at 11. Multiple families, 3,500, mobile home, 2,600. This would be a good fee to substitute in that, but I think to go in there and just cut the snake's head off and leave it flopping all over is a bad way to do business. I think we should give notice, say, okay, the city is going to do this. This is the period. This is how long you have to do this. I know staff can come up with the parameters here, and it will work. And to consider maybe an impact fee that we never need or we use, such as the park impact, would be the other incentive to offer. And that would be my input on this.
City Administrator.
Thank you. I punched up originally, actually, Mayor, in response to your comment that this should have gone to the Economic Development Committee prior to coming here. I just want to clear the record on that point because it's been suggested by, I've heard it from multiple parties, and just want to clarify what went on. I take instruction from the council, and the direction I give to staff is based upon direction from the council. Council had previously directed staff to bring this forward at this time. And if you looked at the timing of what's going on with our general fund update and progress, this is the timing that your instruction some year and a half ago was to bring it forward. I then, within the last 24 hours, have reviewed the last major significant discussion we had on September 17th, I think it was, of 2013. Watched that discussion online, and again, it was reiterated. This council's instruction was to bring this item forward now. And in fact, there was a motion being made at the time with the second that was really seeking to put in an automatic reinstatement, if you will, and the advice of the attorney, it was rather to bring the item forward. So we take our instruction from you. Your instruction multiple times was, this is the time to bring this forward. Secondly, in my review of what the purpose of the Economic Development Committee, and I've got fantastic, modest respect for the committee and its members, and I think they do wonderful, wonderful things. But looking specifically at what their mission, what their duty is, it's clear that this was not included in what I see that you've commissioned previously and instructed us in terms of what their mission is. So if that has changed or it is desired to change, I think we should be purposeful about that. And because not only on this item, but on other items, it's been suggested, well, did you go there, or should you, why didn't you go there, or you should have gone there? If that's what we want to do, I'd suggest that, we set up that discussion, we make that purposeful policy decision, that those sorts of things are going to be routed that way, and we'll certainly follow what your direction is. But this item is being brought forward at your direction, and that's what we did. So I just want to clarify that, because it makes it difficult then when you're suggesting we should have done something different than what your instruction was.
Okay, anyone else at this time? Brad, do you have something you want to add in? You've been standing patiently.
Mayor, council members, I just want to answer one of the items that Councilmember Costa brought up. The roughly $2.8 million that was estimated to be waived during the period that this was suspended, that lost revenue from development doesn't reduce the cost of the improvement. So it basically transfers that $2.8 million from developer to the general revenue stream of the city. So once these improvements have to be made, we have to find $2.8 million from general revenues. I just want to make that clear, that it's not a waiver. The waiver hasn't eliminated the need to have that $2.8 million available. It just has to become available from somewhere else, and it has to come from the city.
Or isn't it that you can push out the time frame? I mean, technically.
Well, the development is based on activity. So once that activity threshold is met, you have to do the improvements. So.
Yeah, so just to clarify that, there's a finite number of impact fee opportunities for collection. If you have an existing building, for instance, and you're doing a remodel, you don't pay the street impact fee. It's based on a new building being built. So in theory, well, not in theory, what it was actually done during that study is we looked at all the vacant land in Lompoc. We applied the zoning appropriate to that vacant land to make an estimate of the square footage that would be ultimately built out. And that's the number, the denominator of how the fee was calculated. So as those vacant lots turn into buildings, and assuming that they don't ever rebuild those buildings, tear them down and rebuild them again, you really have lost that opportunity to collect on that piece of property. So
what about tearing down and rebuilding them another property?
We would give credit for the square footage that's already there, so they would have paid a difference in the fee. So there really is a lost, Mike was right, there's a lost opportunity with every building that gets built.
I definitely see the perspective. I do. And as I go through and I look at the amount that we currently have in the fund at $2.4 million, the revenue, or the impact fees that were lost during the last 5 years, and then what it's going to take to get us to even fund one of the projects, $8.4 million or $8.8 million in 2003 numbers, so maybe 10, 15 million. We won't get there if we extend this much longer. So I see that, especially because I guess technically, like you said, the improvement has to happen when the development when the need is there, when it's been built out and it has to happen.
And we have to find the resources to pay for it, whether it's out of this $2 million that's sitting in impact fee account or elsewhere.
So I think that that's not I don't think that's the issue or the concern for council to waive this fee in perpetuity. I don't think that's the concern. I think it's more about how we proceed very carefully over the next period, whether it's a phase in, like Councilmember Starbuck talked about, or whether we focus on the projects who have approvals but maybe haven't pulled building permits. I think that's more the question for tonight, to be completely honest, and unless there is a differing opinion, but based on the information we're given, it's been waived for 5 years. We probably do at this point need to look at reinstating the fee. Thank you.
Okay, let's open this up for public comment. Who would like to talk to us on this subject?
Mayor, council members, city staff, community members. I'm Janelle Osborne, Chair of the Economic Development Committee. And while we agree that it is proactive to reevaluate when it's the right time to reinstitute these fees, we suggest that it be evaluated in a more thorough manner. And while it's true that council gives direction and that it is based on a straight up just bring it back as is, we would like to see staff be more proactive about your number one goal of being economic development, and consider that when they do their staff reports and evaluate it based on that and develop it in a way that is along Councilmember Starbuck's recommendation of, rather than to just be as soon as 60 days. Because there are several projects out there that we have had feedback in the last 5 days when this appeared on the agenda with the full documentation of how it would impact, and said it would shut them down. They would not arrive in town. We have made those conversations, picked up the phone, talked to them to get that feedback. So doing something that shuts us down immediately and avoids it goes against all the headway staff has made in becoming a business-friendly office, community, and business-friendly to getting the process done. This would be a red flag to that. So we agree we need to plan for the future. Yes, we cannot do this in perpetuity, but we should do it wisely and over a plan that gives you more of an incentive. Structure it or phase it in so it says, here's your window. Because those that are grandfathered in, they're thrilled. They're happy they missed it. But those in the next 60 days haven't pulled the permits that they need, haven't filed what they need to get done, are going to completely walk away from us. And there's several large projects like that that are out there that are still just trying to wade through what is required even without thinking of impact fees. And they openly said that would shut them down. So again, we're not out of the recession. Newspaper reported today, unemployment's gone back up. So if it was part of that, as you read from 2011, nothing's drastically changed. So there's your first concern. Secondly, the report lacks concrete examples of how it would impact so that we can make better decisions in the long run. You've asked great questions, Councilmember Costa, about those. Those should be included in the report so that that's out there for public discussion quicker than the chart being changed again tonight and seeing the word vary rather than a solid number. And we understand that it will vary because of the way it's structured, but again, it's now changed once again, so it's even more confusing, and rather than being even clearer, it actually muddied the discussion right up to the point of having it here tonight. So we'd like to look at what are other communities doing? Have they reinstituted theirs? How many of them have waived it during the same time? Are we in the same ballpark? Not because it's our cost. We need to factor in our cost, but what are they charging for their costs so we know where we're frightening them away if we reinstitute it. And then do a reinstatement in a manner that is business friendly and an incentive rather than a 60-day, oh my God, shut them down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Nicholas Gonzalez, resident and local business owner. I'm looking right now on my phone, May 22nd, 2014 article in the Wall Street Journal, and it quotes, "Housing recovery requires tricky balancing act." You can apply that to commercial sector, to the retail sector, anything that requires new construction. As a mortgage lender, I can tell you that most pro formas for financing projects are done in a year, 2 years, sometimes 3, 4 years in advance. So you do this pro forma, and I've discussed this many times in your presence, that you're calculating the bottom line cost to determine that this project's profitable. So when you do that and you're getting ready to go forward and suddenly there's a new cost, boom, shoot the pro forma out the window, shoot it down. I would just ask to at least reconsider. I agree, Councilwoman Starbuck is on the point. We have to balance that. I agree with Councilman Starbuck as well, that maybe there should be a phase out. So, you know, there's a balancing act, and you got to phase it in. You can't just reinitiate a fee that wasn't put in a pro forma, 2, 3, 4, 6 months, 12 months ago. Yes, I do agree at some point we have to start collecting fees. It's a necessity. But I think you need to give the appropriate parties sufficient time to make adjustments. And if you don't, you can add all the fees you want. But if they don't build it, you won't collect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Mayor, council members, my name's Tom Davidson. I'm a commercial real estate broker and a developer in the area. My office, or my company, has offices from Ventura to Paso Robles. We see development opportunities up and down the coast, and I got to say Lompoc has a bit of a issue in that we're kind of an island out here. So when a developer looks at commercial development or whatnot, we're a ways away from the freeway and we have some disadvantages. So to add fees onto things makes things worse. I can tell you I came here 5 years ago before the council and discussed a couple projects that I had done, Sea Smoke Winery here in town and Terravant, which is in Buellton. We were going to build Terravant here. We came before the Planning Commission. We looked at fees and so forth, walked away. I went and built it in Lompoc. The fees, as an example, that's a 50,000-foot building in Buellton. The traffic mitigation fees were $3,500. I built Sea Smoke here. It was $72,000 for that project. And that's just an example. If you're a residential developer and you build a project and you add some fee to a project, conceivably you can add that on to the cost of the house and recover that fee. If you're a commercial developer and you want to build a winery or a business, you can't recover that fee. It either adds to the cost of your business, or if you're a spec builder and you want to build a building and lease it, it adds to the cost that goes into the lease rate. You can't recover it. And the lease rate kind of is what it is in a community. In addition, I look at this fee schedule and it says light industrial and heavy industrial, and it's based on some magic traffic engineer's study. To my knowledge, there's no light industrial or heavy industrial zoning in this city, and I'll give you a couple examples. We have an 80,000-foot building that I leased to a company called Denmat. There's 400 employees in an 80,000-foot building. I did another project on the east side of town called Santa Rita Hills Wine Center, Zodovich, whatever. It's 76,000 square feet. There's 400 employees in the building on Central. There's maybe 15, 20 in the building out on the east side. But yet, according to this chart that they put up, there's this industrial zoning, and therefore there's so many trips per square feet. There's a bunch of inequities in this that you kind of need to think about before we start reinstituting these fees. In addition, I hear people say, well, we need to study what Carpinteria is doing, what Santa Maria is doing, what Buellton's doing. What about what Austin, Texas is doing? What about South Carolina's got 3 million square feet of buildings going in for Boeing, BMW, et cetera, and how are they attracting people? And guess what? If you get these people in and the companies are there and you generate jobs, that generates other income in the city. So, I mean, if you want to stimulate investment in this city, you need to really think about this fee. And Also, there's this timing issue. Okay, it's going to happen in 60 days. I think you're right. You need to kind of put this out there and say, look, we're going to reinstitute this, and it's over some period of time, so if you want to get that development in and avoid this fee, here's the deal. Not, hey, 2 weeks from now, we're going to start doing these fees again. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? No clapping, sorry.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Aaron Abbott. I'm a Vice President at Robbins Reed. We are the production home builder that builds Briar Creek, including the gardens and the courtyards. The gardens is originally a 150 home community. That project was stopped through its development as a result of the recession. Our company got involved in 2011 in an attempt to reinvigorate that project. There was 80 single-family homes left to build, and there's a second product out there with another 65 homes left to build. To let you know a little bit about who I am and what my work is in the company is I do manage the equity and debt interface there, building the strategic financial model to attract capital to get financing in order to build these projects. So this directly affects what I do. First off, I just want to commend the decision that was made to put the moratorium in place because, believe it or not, it was one of the key factors that enabled us to fund the project. At the fee at the time of $4,600 a house, that's 1.5% of the revenue on each home, and you can imagine 1.5% of a project. That is a highly significant cost. So those types of things do make a significant difference in those decisions. To give it some more relevancy, out of that $2.8 million, $450,000 of that would have been fees we would have paid, and that difference would have would have prevented us from being able to move forward with the project when we did. With the ability to move forward, we've delivered 90 homes in the past 2.5 years. That calculates out to over $27 million in real estate values. One of the neat things there is that's all property tax values, and those are current values that haven't been heard over time from Prop 13 and that type of thing. So those are real revenues to the cities in the short term. One of the things that also comes into play at the moment is when you guys are making this decision is we have seen some price and valuation improvements over the past couple of years, but they haven't been significant. And a lot of those have been eaten up by labor and material increases that were all subcontractors that have been struggling through the recession and still trying to recover their balance sheets. So while we've seen some price appreciation, we're still in a very sensitive part of this recovery. Not to mention that we see a lot of concerns coming out of Vandenberg, and we lose a lot of buyers that are either losing their jobs or afraid that there's going to be budget cuts. So again, just to add to the market's still highly sensitive. One of the things that I was going to mention, one of the big frustrating things that just happened to us recently was a $2,256 fee just got reinstated 100% unexpectedly for the water retrofit fee. And that happened at a moment when we had approved budgets with our capital sources and we were moving forward, getting ready to pull permits, and all of a sudden we were told we were going to have to pay this increased fee, and everyone got pissed off and freaked out. And so this would be a big blow to us, especially with that 60-day window of notification that this change is going to happen on a project that we've been projecting out, as the previous speaker mentioned, for years. So we did in 2013, when we were making the decision to move forward with the current 65 courtyard homes, do an intensive fee study with the city, asking all the questions, and we said we know that this moratorium exists. Is there a chance that it's going to get reinstated? And of course, staff's not expected to tell the future, but they said there's no plans at this time for it to go back to council. So we haven't planned on this fee. We absolutely didn't include it in our projections. We would be in that situation in the middle where we were not expecting to do it, and it would come in a shock. So as a result, the letter I submitted requested two things, and one of those things was that, give us a 12-month heads up, because that's the level of time that we need to update budgets, revisit our projections, take a look at all the impacts of these decisions, and then also that you might be able to tie the reinstatement to some sort of economic measurable parameter, like job growth or such. But thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Who's next?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Steve Pepe, part of the Economic Development Committee and on the Executive Committee. I would submit to you tonight that you really don't have enough information to make an intelligent decision. The staff report, to be kind to it, is very, very thin. I was struck by the juxtaposition that in the prior person speaking on behalf of the staff was saying, well, we ought to have this fee because other communities have this fee. We ought to raise this because we're not following what other communities are doing. In your staff report, there are no comparative rates to Santa Maria, Solvang, the county. There is no benchmarking. So why is it okay to use those to the benefit and say we ought to raise the fees because other places have them, and yet when you come to this area, there's no comparative data. So you don't know whether you're leading the pack, you don't know whether you're way behind, you don't know whether you're in the middle of the pack, or you don't know that you're in the next solar system. And it seemed to me if you're going to make an intelligent decision, you need to do that. One of the arguments is we need these fees because of increased traffic. Again, you're not getting any traffic studies to show that. It's based on a mathematical formula. If you look at the population, in 2000, Lompoc was 41,126. 2009, 41,095. 2010, 42,434. That's the last census. You're not seeing a significant increase in the number of residents. And if you look at the chart before they pulled it, to make it even more confusing, they had commercial, general, service, and hotel and motel. And you look at the dollar figures, and they don't define what commercial general is, but it was 6 times the motel for. And if you look at service, it was 3 times the motel and hotel. If you're based on traffic, hotels and motels attract a lot more people than wineries and warehouses do, so those numbers don't add up. So we now have it varied, so we have no idea what that means. I would also submit that you're not out of the recession. It isn't whether the U.S. is out of the recession or California or Santa Barbara County, it's what you're doing in Lompoc. We unfortunately have the highest unemployment rate at 12%. That rate's been there for the last several years. If you look at the business tax, if you look at the bed tax, sales tax, and new housing over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been some improvement, but nobody's saying we're back where we were in 2005. So again, I would submit the purpose of this was to stir economic development, and absent a showing that we are out of the recession in Lompoc, it's not a well-conceived plan. Another example, and you've heard enough already, but I'll give you one more. The Ayers Hotel is estimating this will cost them $300,000. So if you're building a hotel and you get whacked with $300,000 fee, one of the things you do is you cut the number of rooms. If you cut the number of rooms, that reduces the bed tax you're going to get, that reduces your sale tax potential, etc. In terms of the process, it seems very peculiar to me that you set up economic development as your number one priority, you hire an economic development director, you create an economic development committee, the impact fees were suspended, quote, to promote economic development, and you restate them without advising the Economic Development Committee. You send a letter to the developers 10 days before, but nobody sends us a letter. And 10 days is really not enough time to do it. The chamber doesn't weigh in tonight because they only got about 4 days' notice. So you would think you'd want to know what the Chamber of Commerce has to say. So in terms of next steps, I'd suggest that you send it to the Economic Development Committee on September 11th, our next meeting. Send it to the Chamber, see what their input is, and I think you're going to hear the same thing. If you're going to put it in, it ought to be 12 months down the road, and we ought to look at a staged or feathered reinstatement. So let's assume you put in 25%. If that generates a bunch of people say, oops, we got 12 months, let's get it filed so we can avoid getting hit with the whole thing, that'll be to all of our benefit. If nobody comes and applies, that tells you, as a matter of fact, you probably made the wrong decision. So in summation, I would think that you need further study and a lot more information to make an intelligent decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Who's next? Last chance. Going? Gone. Okay. I'm very concerned about this because I think, as everyone knows, I've had direct contact with almost every project that has come into town, and thinking back to the Briar Creek project and also to the Laurel Crossing project, when we were talking about trying to make it pencil, literally the thing that made the difference was the street impact fee on both of them. And I know someone sitting in the audience remembers that discussion. And that, that's how close it was between go and no go on both of those projects. Had we chosen to have that fee in place, those projects wouldn't have gone forward. Now, they don't generate, property tax doesn't generate tons of revenue for the city, but what does generate a lot of revenue is people buying new houses and buying new curtains and carpet and furniture and all landscaping and all the myriad things that one puts into a new house. I think I agree with Mr. Pepe completely, and I said that going in, so that this needs to go to the Economic Development Committee, and I think they need to include a number of things in their analysis. Number one, they need to include dates certain. So we're not kicking the can down the road. We're making a decision for the future. And those dates need to take into consideration the projects that are underway right now but haven't pulled building permits. And I'll talk about a couple specifically in a minute just to make it very clear. Number two, and I agree with Councilmember Starbuck, maybe a phased way of bringing the projects in. And it can be an incentive, to the city administrator's point in a conversation we had. Having a date certain drives people, we're all deadline oriented, right? When's your next deadline? Oh, I got to get this done by Friday. Well, maybe that Friday is the second Friday in August of next year, but we are all deadline oriented, so we need to have those deadlines. I'm a little less concerned about what everybody else is doing, because I agree completely with both speakers that we're kind of in our own little world out here. We're more affected by us than we are by anything else. To the city staff's credit, the council's credit, the Economic Development Committee's credit, we have worked just diligently to create a city in which a project moves through in a predictable way, in a predictable time period, and that's a huge cost savings. And, I always talk about Rocketown Dodge, but, we took them through the approval process in 72 days. And from the day they kind of started nodding their head up and down at Chrysler Corporation until the day they sold the first car was a year. So that's a credit to our building department and our planning department for moving things forward. There is the question, and the standard procedure has been that when you pull a building permit, you pay. I think that needs to change, and I'm going to tell you why. Today, reading a report the other day, the city is collecting 0.23% interest, so 23/100ths of a percent on the money that we put in the bank. And we've now gone with a new way with part of our money, so we're collecting 0.47 or 8, so less than 0.5%. Inflation is 1.5%. On the other hand, a developer borrowing money for a construction loan to build a project scores at 6%, and it can run to 10% and higher. So rather than collecting those building fees when the permit is issued, we should be collecting them when the certificate of occupancy is issued. And that would be not only a permanent certificate of occupancy, but a temporary certificate of occupancy. When that's issued, so somebody can actually move into a commercial building or close escrow on a house, that's when those fees should be due and payable. The city would probably actually be better off because our money would not be losing value through inflation during that year, and the developer would save a very large amount of money. And again, remember, one of the things that we bring to a project now is certainty for time completion. That is extremely valuable, something I have learned along the way. So I want to talk about one specific project, and there's no one working on it now, so I have no veil of secrecy that I have to maintain. There is a parcel in the 100 block of South 3rd Street that was a condominium project that became an apartment project, whereupon it lost its entitlement. The whole thing went under. The bank took it back, and over the course of the last 2 years, 2 builders have come to me. And I want to talk about the last builder. So this builder said to me, you know, I can't quite make this thing pencil, and one of the large charges on here is a city electric charge, which is a condition of approval from the Planning Commission approval. And working with the city staff, who did a great job, we were able to find a way to reduce the cost of the electric improvements by $50,000, and engineering was able to say, well, you know, you can realign this driveway and you won't have to move this street light, which was about 10 G's. So we had a $60,000 savings, and that wasn't enough to make it pencil. The impact fee on that project will be over $60,000, and there's someone who called me the other day that's kind of looking at it again. So if $60,000 savings couldn't save it, adding $60,000 would surely sink it. As all of us know, there are several hotel projects in Lompoc. And those projects are kind of at that tipping point. But I want to talk about the sensitivity there, and you mentioned that on Ayers it was about a $300,000 charge for that one, and the other one it would be greater because it's a higher room count. But the other side of that coin is based on what I know to be the average percentage of occupancy and the planned room rate in their performance and the number of rooms that are going to be in there, their transit occupancy tax that they would generate between the 2 hotels is about $1.2 million a year, or just short of $100,000 a month. So we might gain $300,000 for the streets, but we could sink a project that would generate $100,000, or projects could generate $100,000 a month. There are 7 projects by my count that we have spent a tremendous amount of time bringing to the community, and many of you in the audience have worked, the staff has worked to bring these projects here, and they're at that stage where there is no way they're pulling a building permit by 60 days from today, or probably 6 months from today. But they have a lot of money invested, and these projects are not quick. I think Tom was talking about the length of time some projects take. The guys from Robbins Reed were talking about the amount of planning. So that's one of the things that the Economic Development Committee needs to look at. You know, what is a reasonable period of time? Yes, at some point we have to restore this fee. I would also disagree with that $2.8 million, because if we had reinstated it, because the Central Avenue Bridge was taken out of the mix in 2011, I think we would have immediately corrected the fee, so it's probably in the vicinity of 1.6 to 1.8. But at some point, we have to begin collecting these fees. So I think our goal is to ask the Economic Development Committee to do some more free work for us. Appreciate it. Thank you. Look at the most viable way to bring this back, and whether it's what time frame it is, whether it's all at once or it's in pieces. Surely the development community would be happy to share information with you. Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I agree with the discussion we've had today. It doesn't, from the feeling, it doesn't look like we're ready to pass this thing or to set this thing forward tonight. The mention of being a business-friendly city, we've worked very hard to become business-friendly, and we are at that point right now. We've used this as an incentive, and I think it's been proved that it has been an incentive. Councilmember Starbuck's comment about phasing it in. Absolutely, we should. When we bring this back, we should consider some sort of phasing in. Probably starting to phase it in at maybe in 6 months. So start date and then phasing it in at some point after the 6 months. But one thing we haven't talked much about is Councilmember Starbuck brought up the park fees. He mentioned it. None of us have talked about it at all. That could be a huge benefit to the developers if they're not charged that park fee. So I think we need to spend a little time, maybe us up here, or when we send it back, if we send it back to staff. I think we need to spend some more time on that. That alone may be able to make or break a project.
Councilmember Starbuck.
I'm glad you brought that back up, Councilmember Lingle, because if we were going to go ahead and extend the street impact fees for somebody like yourself that's doing residential, this waiving of the parkland impact fee would be a huge carrot for you. You're talking each single family home at $3,800. This offsets inflation. This offsets everything else. This will put you in the finance market again on a 60-home project or whatever. Part B on this that a lot of people aren't looking at is the guy that owns the 50 by 140 lot that would like to put in a duplex. All of a sudden now we've suddenly saved this guy almost $3,600. There's a carrot for infill. Here's something local we can do. This only affects the residential. There's no impact for commercial, heavy, light, general service, industrial, light, heavy, and all this. This is nothing more than single family, duplex, multi, and then mobile home. It's the perfect thing to hang out there to start this. It's what you guys as developers and finance people are looking for. This should piggyback whatever decision we're going to make on the street impact fee, because right now it's an impact fee that we have absolutely no use for this money. We can't afford to maintain the parks we currently own, much less have money sitting in a giant account earning nothing to buy land that we're never going to buy. So.
Okay, anybody else want to put a word in?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I just wanted to share that park impact fee that you're discussing applies to infill housing and not housing developments that have tract maps.
Exactly. I mean, let me clarify this, that typically if it was going to be a large development that would do their own park, they would include their own park. If they were going to fall under the Quimby, this is straight up just for the small development or somebody that's, not going to provide their own.
Yeah, let me just clarify that. So it's a large tract falls under with a tract map falls under the state regulations, and it pays the Quimby fee, which is not something we have any control over. And then a small local parcel of infill falls under our city parkland fee, which is designed to backfill that gap. Am I getting it right, Teresa? Okay, good. Councilmember Holmdahl, and then Councilmember Costa.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting discussion tonight. The park fee is one I was going to discuss too, because I think that is one that we don't need any more parks. So I mean, how we set it up, and that should have been. We talked about it a long time ago, but nothing happened. It just came back in there. And I think that what we've seen and what's going on here tonight in the discussion going down the road, we're going to have to look at it more. When is that time coming in? When are we going to put it on there? But we got to get the project started. We got several housing projects that's in the process. We don't want to lose them. We need the housing. There's no doubt about it. Everybody talks about we have a shortage of other things, but we do have a shortage of housing. People cannot find houses in the area to buy when they want to. And we do have people coming to town, no matter what everybody tells you, there is people coming to town and they want houses. So that's what we've got to do and keep the prospects coming. When I talk to the Toast people, they're interested. There's a couple other things that I never talked about the fees. There was something else that they're as much interested as they are the fees. But the development plans have to be set up, and how we set it up, maybe we have to go back to economic development, but there's some other issues that have been brought up tonight that they're either going to look at or we're going to have to look at. And when that time frame is and when we're going to put it on. But we can't kick it down the road anymore. We got to come to them back and make a positive date that it's going to be 6 months, 8 months, 10 months down the road, and that'll be it. Because what I haven't seen and heard tonight, that with what we had and what we gave them, that no fee, how many houses were built? How many come in and got permits?
151.
151, and that isn't a whole heck of a lot. And I think if we're going to do it, we're going to have to get more of them coming in, and they're going to have to come back and say, all right, that's going to make a difference on my development plan, and they got to do that.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Davidson. You know, you brought up a really good point. You know, and of course the challenge that we have, just like when somebody's selling a property for the highest and best use, is that although there may only be 20 employees in that square footage footprint now, there's room for there to be 400 at some point. So we have to plan for that potential, and that's the challenge that we face. Because then you may have developments that are charged a fee that they don't actually need to incur because they don't have that level of impact. But you see that that's the struggle. I know you understand that. The Economic Development Commission question, you know, we've kind of just said that we're not sure we have a way to measure the economic impact. Do we feel like with enough time we can actually measure that? I mean, Marilyn, a lot of what you stated I believe to be true, but again, because it's anecdotal, I don't know. We only have one person here who is actually in the midst of that process who could attest to that. So my concern is that we send it back to them, and we're not really going to have a really good measure on that economic impact anyway, because it's going to be based on assumptions, and we can make the same or opposite assumption, right? So that's, I appreciate their work and willingness to be involved. I mean, of course, I always say let's utilize our volunteers, even more than they probably want to. So if that's the direction, I understand that. But, you know, I want to take it back to staff, Mr. Luther, for just a second. Is there anything that in this discussion that we've had this evening and the concerns that you're hearing, are there any solutions that you have this evening that would facilitate us deciding, you know, reinstituting these fees, but having a certain way of doing that that's equitable and to ensure those who are in that sort of middle phase, like I was talking about, aren't penalized for not having pulled building permits at this time?
City Attorney can correct me if I'm incorrect, but you know, my understanding is that the 60-day period is the minimum required by law. I think you can set the time period at any length you wish. If you wish to institute it in 6 months, a year, you could do that.
And you still feel that the pulling of the building permit is the threshold, regardless of the time frame.
Kevin, if you
If I
want
can
to
jump in, yeah. Kevin McKeon, Public Works Director. State law allows impact fees to be deferred until certificate of occupancy, as the mayor was suggesting. So we present the bill at the time of the pulling the permit, and at the request of the applicant, they could set, at that time they say, hey, we'd like to, it's common in the industry to defer those fees until occupancy. And so that runs with the permit, and we basically collect those at occupancy as a part of that sign-off. So that's something we do right now, just so we're all clear about that. That's an option. And I'd make a suggestion to the council. If the council is unanimous on deferring this further than the 60 days, let's just do that. And I would rather not study it, spend time looking this over, and we're now 6 months down the line before I'm back in front of you talking about implementing now 12 months later. If there's a consensus on how long you'd like to take before this implement, let's do that. If it's 25% starting 3 months from now and then another 25% 6 months later, whatever it is, I'd like to move forward on this if there's a consensus there.
Well, I'm sorry, that didn't answer my question, which was I agree with you exactly that if that's the one concern is that time frame, then we can do that this evening. But the question of the threshold to decide who is subject to the impact fees and who is not. So if the pulling of the building permit is the only option we have, or if we have other options like projects who have the already approved vested tract map, or other, I don't know, there could be other things. I just know about this one specifically.
Right. So I think what we wrote in the staff report was if you have a vested map and you have fees that are associated with that map, and the new fees are less than what they were vested, we would charge you the lower of the two fees. So we were trying to give the benefit, the economic benefit to that developer. Mike's right in the instance of the person that has a vested map that hasn't ever built anything. Our understanding was the council wanted to encourage building. So if they just have never taken the opportunity or taken advantage of the opportunity that was there, and for whatever business reason they have, you're right, we're not doing anything with that group of people. You certainly could if you want to. If you want to say, if you have an approved project as of this date, you're exempt, you could certainly do that.
Okay, that was the answer
Right.
I've been looking for.
Right.
That there is another option besides the pulling of the building permit as the threshold for how this applies.
Yes, you could permanently exempt all developments that have been approved at this point if you want to. I mean, this is a decision that council can make.
I'd just add on to that response that while you could do it and waive them indefinitely, following up on a private conversation I had with the mayor that he alluded to, that's the point we're sharing to the public here, is if we don't lay out certain dates, then you've lost the impact of whatever financially the incentive was. From an urgency standpoint, you lose that. And that's why, I certainly like the idea of whether you're, putting the implementation date out in the future sometime, whether you're staging that in or just picking a different implementation date. The idea that we have a schedule to put that in place, whether it's 60 days or 6 months or in stages over time, I like that idea because I think it helps prove out also what the incentive is doing for you, or how effective that incentive is. Because I'm observing, for instance, there were projects that have been ready to go that have not gone with this fee waive. So the fee waiver did not cause things to be built in some cases.
Right. But it may have taken it a step closer. Right. That the argument could be made.
It may have, but as we speak today, we haven't seen evidence of activity in a number of cases. So to the extent we could say, wow, this is getting ready to come in, but if you do critical mass by X amount of time, you can avoid that.
Right.
And we get some starts and we see some starts going up, then I think, well, that's a great thing, and that variation is something you can start to measure.
Even if we don't, and I agree with you completely, right? But even if we don't see startups or however you describe that, still giving that sort of fairness and the awareness and that business-friendly side of things, I think is equally important, regardless of whether this creates more development or not.
That's true, and ultimately we don't know what I'd call the null. Anytime we're taking activity, we never know, well, what would have happened had we taken no activity? It goes back to the question before. We don't have a way to measure that. So we assume it either is, we can more than assume, we can believe that it is either flat has no impact, we tried something and it just didn't help, or it does indeed help. That's one of those two outcomes.
So, and that's sort of my question for council to discuss for this evening. I mean, I think we all know that there needs to be an extended time frame on this beyond 60 days. Potentially that threshold can be different. I don't know if we want to talk about project exemption in perpetuity necessarily, but I think that's a decision that can be made tonight, is all I'm arguing.
And one other thing I'd like to add in, that if there is other analysis to go on, I think it's important that we not just look on the economic development side, but if you're going to be studying these things, they have to be on the impact side, because we have a business we're trying to run here as well. And economically, the win-win situations need to be that. They need to win-win in all aspects. And if what we're doing is we're gaining on the private development side this much, and we're losing on the public financial responsibility side this much, I'd suggest that's not our best investment.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Weimiller, I'm glad you mentioned the term win-win, because I had that written down over here. So what would the effect be if someone made a motion tonight to waive all fees for all approved projects that are currently approved projects for the next 12 months as an incentive for these projects to get going? Then in 12 months, we begin phasing these fees back in at 25% every quarter over the next 12 months. So that would mean in 24 months, we have the full impact fees back in force. Could this be a win-win for the city if we were able to incentivize the approved projects? We talked about the projects that were approved in 2005. They are not subject to the waived fees. Am I correct? They're not subject.
They are.
They are subject. Okay. So if we got them for the next 12 months and they were able to start the projects, and then over the next, and then 25% over the next 12 months for the remainder of the year, would you consider that a win for the city, or?
Possibly a win if indeed those are projects that are yielding, like in the example the mayor gave, where you're having a tremendous amount of TOT that's going to be delivered, and indeed this is the make or break point on the project being viable, then then that's a win. If on the other hand we're not seeing any increase of activity, all the activity that occurs is activity that would have occurred, then no, we didn't have a win. We didn't have a win-win in that case.
Okay, because we have to find some sort of I guess the best term is the win-win. I mean, we're right. We have a business to run here, but we cannot just, hearing from the public right now and the developers, we can't just all of a sudden reimpose this at 60 months, even though they should have known this was going to be coming back today. But we are business friendly right now, so I think we need to work out something on this dais tonight. Well, not necessarily tonight. We can send it back, but I'd like to see us work it out on this dais tonight. Instead of sending it back, taking more time, that we can propose something that the developers are happy, they understand what's going to be happening in 12 months, 24 months, or 6 months or 12 months. Let them know ahead of time, and then proceed at that point to fully reinstate the fees. So I guess that's our challenge tonight.
Let me take just a second. So I spent all day Sunday digging through files and trying to put thoughts together on this, and at the end of the day I came away with the understanding that I didn't have enough information to make a decision, because it's a very complex question. I didn't have time to call each and every project and say, how does this impact you and what's the time frame that you need? I don't have anywhere near, and this is usually not me because I'm usually pretty hard digging up information, I don't have anywhere near enough information to make that kind of a decision tonight. But I agree with you, Bob, that it needs to be a near-term solution. And I agree with Dirk that we should probably look at phasing it in rather than in one bite, even though it is a lesser amount. I don't know if it's every quarter or every 6 months or every year. I really think we have the Economic Development Committee that's our tool to look at these things, and I'm sure that they could get right after it and come back to us, and it wouldn't be 6 months up the road. And, you know, frankly, I don't know what the council adopted in 2011 when this showed up. I saw it on the advanced agenda, and I kind of wrinkled my brow and went, oh, okay, we'll see. But then as the deeper I got into it, the much more concerned I became. Because as you pointed out, Bob, we worked really hard to get our positive economic development friendly community here, and we've been very successful at it. At the end of the meeting, I was going to announce that we had an 8.8% sales tax increase in the first quarter, so we've now exceeded 2007 plus inflation. So life is good to us. So I'm still with the fact that I would like the council, each one of us, to chime in and say what it is we would like the Economic Development Committee to look at, and that we would expect to have a response from them within 60 days. I think the time frame for the implementation is important, whether or not it will be a phased implementation, and then changing our city policy so that no one has to ask to pay their fees at the end. That's just the way it is. And it's just, it doesn't make any sense. You know, back when we were able to put money in the bank at 8%, that was a pretty big incentive for us, but right now it's no incentive, and when money's worth 8% again, the next council or the council thereafter can change it. So, Councilmember Starbuck.
I'm going to make a couple of comments. You know, we could send it back to the Economic Development Committee, and they could work at this and look at it, but I'm going to state, we didn't even start incurring impact fees till 1989. In the big scheme of what we do, this is really a new way of garnering money for the city. What did we do prior to 89? We didn't have impact fees. They just went through permitting. I personally think that we put the dagger in the back of the bull here. We just say, let's do this. We'll cease August 2016. Street impact fees go away, and I'd like to piggyback the parkland improvement fees on it. If, you know, it's like people say, you're going to go out for financing, you're going to build a performer, you're not going to get it done in 6 months. You're not going to be able to analyze a program. To get financing can take a year. We've seen this with projects from 05, trying to build things. I mean, let's just give it a 2-year, let's include the parkland, tip our hats and say, let's make it work. It's, to me, a pretty easy solution here.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mary Lynn. Councilmember Starbuck, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with that.
Councilmember Humble.
Yeah, it's interesting that some are for it, against them, but you know, you got to remember, if we give it to the Economic Development Committee, it's just us kicking it down the road instead of us making a decision, letting somebody else make it for us. And I think, yeah, that's kind of the concern I have, if we just keep doing that. They've done a good job. They come back in with some good recommendations. They've done a lot already. But we have to make the final decision if we keep going back and forth. So.
Well, I think my point in giving it to them is to get some good advice. At the end of the day, we're going to make the final decision. I agree with you. And I'm happy to do it sooner rather than later, but I'm not prepared to do it tonight because, frankly, I don't have enough information. And that's not my usual song. So. Councilmember Lingle.
Well, actually, tonight we did hear from the Economic Development Committee, but we heard two different versions of it. Not really two different versions, but Mr. Pepe brought up that we don't have enough information, which, Mr. Mayor, you agree with that. We don't have enough information. Ms. Osborne indicated that we're not giving enough time. We shouldn't put this out right away. So if we want to listen to the Economic Development Committee, which we should, we develop this committee for the purpose of helping our city, improving our business-friendly community, getting businesses in here. So I agree. Why don't we ask the city to work with the Economic Development Committee, but we can't kick it down the road forever. We need to, within 6 months, have something back to us, including something looking at the park impact fees. I'd like to have that included. I think Mr. Starbuck has a good reason for bringing it back, but also phasing it in over a period of time instead of just automatically hitting us with something at day 0 from day 1 or something like that. So I'm in favor of sending it back for reanalysis, getting some more information, including the Economic Development Committee.
Janelle and Steve and Tom, could you guys put your heads together for just 15 seconds and kind of maybe give us a time frame that you think is reasonable? Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break so they can have 30 seconds because we've been sitting here a long time. Okay, coming back for discussion, the Economic Development Committee reports that they could review this and have a recommendation back to the City Council within 60 days, give or take a day or two, depending on how the meeting dates fall. So I'm still with my recommendation that I think they've listened to all of our input, and I'm willing to move that we refer this to them and they return to us within 60-ish days with a recommendation for the council to look at. And I'd be looking for a second.
Mayor Lynn, is that just for the park impact fee and the street improvement fee, or is this a more theoretical argument about all the impact fees and how that might?
I don't want to get that wide. Let's just solve these two things for now. Let's get these two done, and then if we want to have a wider discussion, we can send it back to them. But let's get this done, and you understand that we're looking for dates certain in the future, not a theoretical. So I'm still looking for a second.
I'll second.
Okay. And is there any other discussion? Anybody? Okay. Could we vote, please? And that passes 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Okay. That is going to bring us back to the pulled consent item. Item number 5. And he heard he was up and he ran. Come back, Brad, come back. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Councilman Starbuck.
I just wanted to mention that the reason that I requested to pull item 5 was the perception that happens whenever we discuss fees. I will use an example of when the fire department presented their update on the master fee schedule. 80% of the fees that the fire department charged went down. 1 or 2 went up. The public's perception was that all of a sudden we're charging to have fire services. Well, we'd always charged, but we had never updated. This is what this item is about here. It's been 25 years since we'd reviewed our fees that we charge. Are we within the law? Are we below it? And that's why I asked if Mr. Wilkie could go ahead and talk about this with us so we understand what the fees are. We're not incurring new ones. We're going to, well, I'll let Mr. Wilkie take it.
And I would just preface my comment by saying I hope everyone understands that these 2 studies are not about rate increases in water, sewer, electric, or trash. They are about fees for service when someone comes to us and wants something done, and that we charge our cost. We can't charge more, and we can't charge less. We have to charge what it costs us. Otherwise, it's that proverbial gift of public funds.
Oh. Sorry about that. I thought the last item would go a few more minutes. I had a few items I had to take care of. I just want to give you a couple of, these contracts are for studies to be done
in anticipation of doing our budget process for 15-17. Mentioned in the presentation at the beginning of this meeting a few hours ago, where some of our fees are not where they need to be. And one of the reasons for that is that the last fee study that we had, that our master fee study is based on, occurred in 1990. That's almost 25 years ago. When our attorney came on board in 2009, we talked that long of a time of having just CPI increases is probably not a good thing. And that was borne out by Prop 26 when that was passed in 2012 or so. And Prop 26 basically affirms what the mayor just said. We can charge for services, but we can't charge more than what our cost is. So those two aspects led me down the path of requesting to have a fee study done to update our master fee study, not just for the existing fees that are on the master fee schedule, but also fees that have become services that have become things we are doing now that we didn't have in 1990. Some of those things are our soccer fields that are down at Riverbend did not exist in 1990. The aquatic center that we have now did not exist in 1990. So there's things that have changed, circumstances that have changed that have created opportunities to review our fees. I have had the opportunity to work with Bill Statler, who is the former finance director for the city of San Luis Obispo. He is a very well-known producer of policies, procedures. The city of San Luis Obispo has some policies regarding fee studies, and I'm just going to go through a couple of items that are in their budget related to fee studies and user fees in general. Their goal is to review and update on an ongoing basis to make sure that their charges are up to date with the cost of living and based on the methods and levels of the service delivery. So they're continuously looking at them. When I came aboard in 2009, San Luis Obispo was just concluding their third fee study in 5 years. So they've been looking at it consistently and quite often. And one of the things that they do, because there are fees that we charge that are not equal to the cost. Probably a good example is on public safety. We have fees that are in public safety, but they do not recover the full cost of what public safety costs the organization. That's primarily because of what public safety is a service to the community. It's primarily funded by taxes, but there are certain aspects of public safety, both fire and police, that are paid for by fees. But we're not ever going to expect to pay for 100% of fire and police with fees. So there's a choice that the council can make once you get the fee study to say, we expect the level of recovery for this type of service to be 100%, or when it's related to things for development, it might be something that's a little bit less than 100%, because even though the development is having an impact on the city, there's a community-wide benefit of what the service is being done to ensure the public safety, things like that. So you may not charge 100% to the developer because it's creating a benefit to the whole entire community. Going back to San Luis Obispo, they will not have a fee study that's in place for more than 5 years. They use that level not because of Prop 218, which has a 5-year limit too, but it provides a good balance between having fees that are raised by cost of living for the 5-year period, but also gives you an opportunity to review those in more a comprehensive manner every 5 years. Doesn't quite match up with our budget cycle, but it allows for you don't have to do a fee study every single budget cycle, and it gives you some economies of scale. We went far the other direction by not having a fee study since 1990. That's just, we shouldn't have done that. We should have done one in 95, 2000, 2005, 2010. And a result of that is, since 2009, 2010, we have not raised our existing fee schedule by any cost of living because it's based on something that's so far out of that date. So that's why we're bringing this here forward at this point in time, to get a fresh look at our existing fees, to get a look at potentially new services that we're already providing that do not generate fees, that we should be legitimately collecting a fee on. Another aspect is, I was talking to Kevin McKeon, our Public Works Director, today, and the fee structure that we have for our building permits is based on the 1997 Uniform Building Code, which was the last code that was published that had a fee schedule. All the codes since then have purposely not had a fee schedule. So the fees that we're charging right now are based on 1997 rates without any kind of cost of living increases for building permits. So we want to take a look at that. That's one of the primary areas where we want to look at to make sure that we're collecting our costs. The second contract that is being proposed here tonight, that was mentioned by the gentleman that was sitting here in the front, there are services that are provided to our utilities by the general fund. The classic example is administrative oversight, HR, payroll, accounts payable, all that kind of stuff. Those things are accounted for in our cost allocation plan, which is prepared in conjunction with our budget and approved as part of our budget. But in addition to that, there are other things that are provided to, services that are provided to the utilities that are not captured by the cost allocation plan. Probably a good example is our water infrastructure. After 9/11, a big emphasis was placed on security of utility infrastructure, electric distribution lines, electric transmission lines, water facilities, to make sure that they're safe. Our fire and police services provide that safety net for our utilities, so they should be paying for that. The proposed contract is with a firm that looks at those costs on a comprehensive basis based on costs, so that they're defensible under Prop 218 and Prop 26. So that's a safety valve that I'm proposing to do, because we had studies that we did in 1997 after Prop 218 was put in place to justify paying for some of those costs. And that's about 16 years old, so I believe it's a good time now to relook at that, to make sure that we're not, like Mary Lynn said, charging more than what the services are being provided for. So that's just a real basic summary of what these two studies are planned to be done. One benefit of the work that was done as part of the presentation this evening was that some of the information that Pornima has gathered, we can present to the successful bidder, and we're a little bit ahead of the game already, just because the proposed fees that have come out of the departments can be relayed to them without having the consultant go back to the departments and asking the same questions. So we've gained some efficiencies right there by utilizing Veritas. So I wasn't sure if that's the scope of what you were looking for, but that gives you a little bit of a summary of what the reasons for this is. And the primary reason is Prop 26 requires us to have charges that are not in excess of our costs, and the fact that we haven't had one since 1990.
Brad, as part of the utility side, you'll also look at the fees that we charge for various services that the utility does, not necessarily, you know, if it's the water utility, not the rates for water, but plan checks and all of that.
Well, a really good example is we have meter charges for when somebody adds to or builds a house, we have a meter charge to install that meter. That charge is not related to the service cost, the utility cost. We will take a look at that and make sure that the cost that we're incurring to buy the meter, install the meter, is commensurate with the cost that we're charging them. So,
which is also...
Yeah. And there's a myriad of other things that are charged on a per unit basis that is not related to the provision of the utility service. That's what that utility is doing.
Yeah, and you're just thinking in 1990, desktop publishing didn't exist. So if there were costs built into a particular fee for going out to get that type of work done, now we do that right here in-house, so presumably that fee would be reduced. Some things are going to go down and some things are going to go up. That's the point.
Yeah, and we had a conversation earlier, the fees that the fire department put in place to be able to utilize their outside billing company, many of those fees actually were reduced from what were existing because of having the exponential increase of 25 years of CPI. Some things don't go up that much. Computers have gone down in that time frame, so things that are based on computer costs shouldn't be going up by cost of living.
Councilman Costa.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. Yeah, that was going to be my point, is that I do think we're going to see both increases and decreases. The challenge, though, is that I think we need to keep in mind that significant fee increases to the utilities are then reflected on the ratepayers, which we're already dealing with rate increases, and I don't think we want to go there. And understanding that, you know, when we make decisions for the city, we see the city as a whole as the forest, not the individual trees or the departments necessarily. And so I just want to be sure that we're very cognizant of that when we take a look at this picture and realize that this is gathering information and we're going to get a set of recommendations, but the decision to increase, we just have to be very careful of. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. I think it's premature to say that we'll have more increases and decreases, but part of both studies will be the recommendations from the consultants to say, here's what a typical cost recovery is, and so you can gauge that at that point in time. So,
no, I think that makes sense, and you know, we're always for more information gathering, as you can tell with our last agenda item. So, and that's what this is. But just to clarify, the contracts that we're entering into are for studies that we hadn't done since 1990. Both of them, or just one of them?
The user fee study was last done in 1990. We did an internal study for the enterprise recovery costs in 1997.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Pretty old stuff. Okay. Thanks, Brad. I'm going to open this to oral communication. Anyone like to talk to us about this subject? Don't everybody run down at once. Going once, going twice, gone back to the council. I think Councilmember Starbuck, you pulled this item. Do you have any other questions before we go forward?
No, I'd go ahead and make a motion that we accept staff recommendations for item 5 on the consent calendar.
And a second. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes 5-0. Thank you. Who would like to start out on council reports?
Yeah, the only council report I'm going to make was that I'd really like to throw out a big congratulations to the Police and Fire Foundation and their car show and cruise. You guys whooped the alumni, and they're going to figure out how you did it. So watch out. Good show and lots of money made for you guys.
Okay, Dwayne?
I forgot about that. A couple of things I want to see. Well, I've seen several. New fire truck. That is fantastic. You haven't seen that new truck we got. We got it dedicated. That is a fantastic piece of machinery. And have we sent it up to Northern California yet? That fire's going up there. Surprised it hasn't went up.
At the time, it wasn't quite fully equipped. At the time, we got called into service, so we sent our older brush truck to go to Northern California. It is now, though, in Southern California. It is in action right now.
I was wondering, we had two fires in the last 3 days, so I figured that. The other thing is, I made to the opening of the 99-cent store. I don't know if you've been down there to see what it looks like. They redid the whole inside. They had quite a crowd that day, and the first 11 got a 40-inch TV, and the next 99 got something else, so it was quite a deal. Also, I made the El Camino School kickoff and the Champion Center, fantastic facility that we have sitting up there. And like I've told people that we're one of the few cities in the United States that have two facilities that nobody else has in the United States. So as this gets going and what's going on that center, so everything. Look, the other thing I know John looks at it and others, but I look at it all the time, is that from A Street going west, we got a nice tumbleweed factory going on.
They're mowing them today.
They weren't when I went by.
Yeah, they're mowing them
But
today.
as I was saying, I thought we could sell it to agriculture and then put molasses on and feed their cows. That's how my dad left Kansas. That's the only food they had in Kansas in 1933.
Yeah, I mentioned it to the fire chief, I don't know, a week ago, and they're mowing it today. Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Marilyn. I just wanted to reiterate the announcement by Ms. Wall that there is an event surrounding hunger and the issue of hunger in our community, and I'll be on the panel for that. And that's next Monday from 6 to 7 at New Life Christian Church. So if you can make it, please attend. If you cannot, please spread the word. Thanks.
Councilmember Lingle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see, on the 7th, I had my monthly coffee with the community at the Southside Coffee Shop. On the 13th, I attended a meeting for the restoration of the Veterans Memorial Building, which if you have not been in that building recently, you should stop by it. Almost completely refurbished. We just completed the floor in the auditorium. You could see your face in it. It has such a great shine on it. On the 14th, along with the mayor, we were at the 100th birthday party. We were at the Comprehensive Care Center of Carl Robertson, World War II veterans.
E-Day.
E-Day, yeah.
E-Day survivor.
Great ceremony. Military was there to present a flag to him. Family was there. The guy tells some great stories, too. It was a great event. I was also at the Champion Center, the opening ceremony for that. The healthcare district should be real proud, the community should be real proud of that, too. That is a building that could have sat vacant for the next 10 or 12 years, and it could have been a real eyesore. They refurbished it. It is a beautiful, beautiful building, and I agree with Councilmember Humdahl. It's probably one of a kind that we have right here in Lompoc. And then, most importantly, this past Saturday on the 16th, I had attended the renewing of my wedding vows of 40 years with my wife. So that was yeah, she was there, yeah. So it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of friends and family from around the country that showed up. So anyway, 40 years, and she's probably watching right now, so happy anniversary.
Just a bit of good news. You'll all recall that we had a water leak study that was done. And so the other day I asked, hey, what came out? And I got a note back that said they found 3 water leaks within the city. They were each good for about 1,440 gallons per day. So it's estimated that we saved 525,000 gallons of water, compliments of that study that was paid for by a grant. So that was great. I mentioned earlier we had a good sales tax increase in the first quarter, And if we carry that through the year, we will be above what we did in 2007, which is our best year ever. I have 2 items I would request for an agenda. The first one would be for the council to discuss and consider taking a position on the Tranquillian Ridge drilling on Vandenberg Air Force Base, which will be a tremendous economic value to Lompoc, and Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson is now sponsoring legislation to prevent that. And at the same time, we'd like to have a discussion and take a position on Measure P, which would have a tremendously detrimental effect on the Lompoc oil field. It would basically shut it down in the course of perhaps a year and a half. And oil in this county generates $170 million a year in economic benefit. So I'd be looking for a second and a third.
I have a quick question on this. Is this something in our council handbook, though, where we're delving outside of the city, pushing a recommendation again on ballots?
I think because it directly affects us from an economic standpoint, this is within our purview.
Well, Mayor.
Joe's flipping to it right now.
Yeah, the other thing is to consider is the impact on the community of service provisions. So the any funding that goes to the county that then wouldn't go to the county, that then wouldn't provide services in Lompoc, would have direct impact on Lompoc as well.
There would also be a large loss of funding for the school district here within the Lompoc Valley. Matter of fact, the school districts in Santa Barbara County are actually the really big losers on Measure P.
If I may, through the mayor, the pertinent paragraph of your policies is legislation at another government level generally will be formally supported or opposed only if the issue directly affects the city of Lompoc, is within the council's jurisdiction, and is consistent with council policies.
And we don't have a council policy, so we would have to come to one with regard to oil. This is kind of a new issue.
Reading that, I would say that those 2 items that you just mentioned aren't within the intent of that sentence the way I read it, but you decide what the intent of that sentence means.
Well, maybe we need to change the way the sentence reads, because these will surely have a tremendous effect. I mean, about 100 people that live in this vicinity work in the Lompoc oil field. Surely the Tranquillian Ridge project, which would be on South Vandenberg Air Force Base, would most directly benefit the city of Lompoc.
That being said, the next sentence says, formal support or opposition may be expressed on legislation that may affect city finances, enhance public revenue sources, help regain revenues retained by the state of California, and preserve and enhance local control of municipal affairs. So if there's an understanding that the legislation that the mayor is talking about may affect city finances, then your policy says that's something that you can support or oppose.
Well, I guess, yeah, that's the question, is how integrated is the city with the county? When the county is impacted financially, what is that reflection on the city's budget, whether that's decreased revenue to the county because of decreased oil development or elimination of oil development, or a lawsuit, which I guess is the other really big concern, is that there's going to be a lawsuit that the county can't cover, which will be loss of revenues for the county, and how does that translate, if at all, to the city?
I think the direct impact to us is the lost jobs and the lost revenue for those people that work within that industry and the service businesses in Lompoc that service that facility.
Yeah, I think that for me that's one of many of the impacts. I think actually if we really sit down and look at it, you can probably even find a larger impact on Lompoc. I just want to make sure we're being consistent with the policy, because, you know, I go back to the Chumash issue, but the Chumash was really isolated to the valley. It wasn't countywide. It was about some growth aspect. This is really about impacting what's currently existing and impacting Lompoc directly adjacent to our jurisdiction. So there is, I think that it is kind of up to us to make that, to have that discretion.
I'll just toss out there, I'll agree with you on the Tran Ridge, but I think that we cross the line when we go to Measure P.
Okay, so let's divide the question. So we'll take on Tran Ridge first, and so I'm still the first. Who'd like to be the second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and who'd like to be the third?
I'll third.
Okay. Now let's go to Measure P and the effect that that will have by shutting down the Lompoc oil field and also oil on Vandenberg Air Force Base. And we got to have a quick check with the attorney, so I'm still the first.
Sorry.
You want to be the second?
Yes.
Okay, and we're still looking for the third.
I'll go with you.
Okay, so we got 1, 2, and 3. The next one is a small economic development problem, and I want to ship it off to the Economic Development Committee. As you know, we have the City of Lompoc Utility Business Incentive Rebate Program, which was established to provide electrical rebates to refill empty buildings. But we discovered the other day that the way it's worded, if a really large building has somebody in one corner, which is what happened, that it doesn't apply. And I would like to have the Economic Development Committee look at a wording change that would solve, it isn't going to fix it in time for the one we're working on now, because it's just not possible, but to fix it for the future, and also to have them consider whether or not this should be applied to perhaps new construction of commercial or industrial buildings. And that's something they would need to look at and come back with. So once again, I'm looking for a second and a third.
I'll go ahead and back you on sending that to the Economic Development Committee.
I'll give you a third.
Okay. All right, that one's done. Thank you very much on that. I have about a 20-minute report, but I'm going to shorten it way up because you guys covered a bunch of it. Perhaps one of the most exciting things of the last 2 weeks was the mayor's luncheon, which was put together with the United Way announcement and the Lompoc Unified School District announcement that Reading Plus will be offered to every child in the Lompoc Unified School District this year, as well as their brothers, their sisters, their moms, and their dads. So we have taken a gigantic step forward for literacy. Just going to see which ones the city administrator and I attended a launch at Vandenberg, and it actually afforded me a moment to talk to someone from a business in Lompoc, and that got me a lead going in another direction, so that was a good thing. For anyone who is not tuned in yet, this is a blatant commercial for our Lompoc radio station. For the first time in, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years, we have a radio station in Lompoc. It's KTNK AM 1410. They're a swing country, just kind of fun stuff. I actually enjoy listening to it. I'm not really a country guy, but they have put a program on the air where I go in once a week and talk about all the great things that are happening at the City of Lompoc, so that's been great. And last week, the business in question that I was able to work with, city staff jumped in and helped, and looks like they'll be signing a lease this week, so we'll fill a long empty building. And with regard to the economic development effort that Ken talked about earlier, I attended that meeting with Teresa, and although in the past I think there's been a lot of friction around the county, there was obviously, the chambers are working together, we the mayors work together pretty well. And you know that phrase in other things in economic development too, that rising water lifts all boats. You know, there is so little property available in some places that things can't be done. And we're the benefit of one that the mayor of Solvang passed to us. And Buellton's the benefit of one that I passed to them because we can make it happen. So this is going to be a more formal approach to make that happen. And the idea is to keep prospective businesses within the cities and the county. And we all agreed that probably turning them into someplace in the county wasn't productive. And the other day we got a new count on our wineries, and we're past 38. So good things are happening there inside the city. Yeah, no, we're way beyond that. I thought it was 32, so, they multiply pretty quick. And Longoria is just getting their final sign off on their new facility at the corner of D and Chestnut.
He's already bringing.
Yeah, he is. He got a temporary occupancy permit. Okay, so therefore, we will adjourn to a regular meeting at 7 p.m. on September 2nd, 2014. Thank you all for attending.